Now, if you think Harry Kane was under some pressure on Saturday as he stood over that football with that second penalty to send it into extra time and beat Wayne Rooney, you ain't got nothing on me today because we're joined by the IET. I'll let you do it before I've run out of nerves.
Run out of nerves, yes. Coming up tonight, we've got special guests from the IET. We've got Mark Coles and we've got Graham Kenyon. So, Mark, what's the best way to describe your job at the IET?
I'm Head of Technical Regulations at the IET and responsible for putting the committees together to make sure we've got the right people managing the committees. And also I work internationally to bring new requirements in to the UK and the BS 7671. How do you describe that?
That sounds like herding cats. And in charge of herding cats, we've got Graham Kenyon here. So, Graham,
hello.
Yeah, I guess you've got the difficult job as chair of JPEL 64.
Yeah.
So what is JPEL 64 first? That's probably the best thing to think about.
Good question. JPEL 64, it's a joint committee that's run by BSI and the IET. And that committee is formed of industry experts. And we're responsible for a number of standards, the main one being BS 7671.
Okay, so if you're chairing them, but that does sound like herding cats, because as we know, if you get 10 electricians in a room, you get 11 answers.
Or more.
Or more, yes, that's it, and no one really agrees, and yeah.
Yeah, so part of the chair's job is to help the committee come to a consensus decision. So we start off with 11 people not agreeing with each other, and we have to get to a point where we have consensus, which is a lack of sustained objection to something.
Yep.
Is the best way of putting that.
Most people agreeing with it, yeah.
And I've got to remain independent and impartial to the discussions, not sort of fall down on the weight of opinion, and also to help make sure that things are run by the rules of BSI, the rules for standardisation, and also help to make sure that any submissions and statements are factually correct as well, technically.
Okay. There's a whiff of a party whip in there as well, isn't it? When you want to get a decision over the line, we'll send or take it off them. Now, if we think about how you got there, that's the end game. That's what you're doing at the minute. Where did you start off, Mark? What got you on the road to here?
When I tell you what, when I was a kid, when I was about 11, we had the house rewired, and the electrician left the cables. They were all VIRs actually, and old Bakelite switches.
Yep.
And I remember connecting those to the battery that I had with my Meccano set. And I got this little lamp to light with switches, and that's what got me interested. And then at 16, I got an apprenticeship in the nuclear industry, Sellafield in Cumbria. I was an electrical apprentice. And then after that, what happened, I came to London. I went to university in London. I was contracting in Canary Wharf, then went to NIC-EIC as operations engineer. And after that, across to IEE, which became IET. And I've been there now 17 years.
Right, so I'm sure someone's going to say it, so I'll let them get away with the joke here. So the hair didn't come from Sellafield then? You don't think it was, perhaps long and blonde when you started, and obviously the effect of all that radiation?
We've had a chat about the silvering, but the silvering we're happy with.
Yeah,
I'll leave it at that.
Are at this end, don't we? Yeah. You cannot suggest there that he's gutted about a bit of silver, is he? Because yours has slipped a little, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I've been used to this since I was in my relatively early 20s, so yeah, I'm just used to it now.
Graham, so how did you get to this position?
I think at the end it was not taking a step backwards at the right time, but how did we get there? Well, I mean, I've worked in the electrical industry since a part-time job. When I was at school, started off working with my dad, repairing washing machines and hoovers and commercial cleaning equipment and so on. I originally wanted to be a doctor, actually, a medical doctor. But I changed my mind, actually, before I got to before I actually got to university, and went and did electrical engineering at university. Whilst I was there, I had part-time jobs working with stage crew, lighting and sound systems, that kind of thing. Really enjoyed that. And when I finished university, I eventually found my way into specialist systems for railways and airports, so control and information systems, covering utilities and building services and lots of other information systems that help to run the airports, railways and highways as well. As part of that, eventually I started working more with compliance, project assurance, So I had a lot to do with making sure we meet all the standards and specifications. And one of the things I got into as well was mainly because it was a new thing to do on projects, and people were stepping away from it, was electromagnetic compatibility. And around about sort of 2002, 2003, I was asked to start helping out to writing the what became section 444 of BS 7671. We started with the international standardization approach and eventually incorporated it into BS 7671. So that was about just shy of 20 years ago. I've been helping to write BS 7671 ever since.
Wow. In a blink of an eye then, you're 1 minute you're a washing machine, next thing you're chairing, actually what everyone thinks is the ultimate chairing in the electrical industry. And I say to people when I go up and down colleges and all the rest of it, I say, the people in front of me now, somebody here could write BS 7671. They don't believe you. But I said, where do you think these people come from in order to write our regulations? There is no course that sets you on that path and yours set you your way, and you ended up in the same positions, but actually took completely different routes in order to get there. And that's not set out. And I'm sure at some point we'll address how do we get on this committee, and can we get on there as a lay person, but we'll come back to that in a few moments.
But we have got Mark and Graham here for, well, as long as it takes. We've switched the heating off, so it's a battle of wills between the questions that you send in, how cold it gets in here. I've got the Makita heated jacket on, so I'm set, and so is Rick as well. He's got the other one. So we'll be here, but use this opportunity to almost ask, I would say, any question you want, really, to sort of, we want to try and get behind the regulations, what happens. Because, you know, we get all sorts of comments out there, you know, new edition, it's an inside job, you know, it's manufacturers just shoveling the latest wares into the regulations so that people have to buy them. I think we've already learned loads today. Yep. It's a bit like a chat show, it's a bit like Jonathan Ross. People always come on when they've got a new book to promote.
And they've got many new books.
Yes, and Graham's brought a selection. So Graham, you've sort of written a few other books, haven't you? So which ones we've got? Is this one? This one's new.
That's the latest one from the IET. Yeah, the second edition of the Code of Practice for Grid-Connected Solar PV Systems.
And you wrote that one, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, that's one. I can imagine that's quite popular at the minute, just with the old climate. And then we've got this one here, which is energy efficient
electrical energy
storage system, or batteries, as we would call them.
So that's one I was co-author of that with Martin Cottrell of Tesla.
Yeah, I can imagine that's quite popular at the moment as well. And then we've got Guidance Note 3.
Yeah, Rick's trying to read it.
Yep, which you've shown us a few gems in here that Gary didn't know existed.
Well, I bought, in my defence here, so obviously I bought Rick a copy, and you know why it works around here. If anything comes in, we give it to Rick, and Rick sorts it out. And Rick let me down because I bought him a copy, he'd only read the first couple of bits. And when I did the first video with him, he wasn't up to speed on testing. Rick's going through his own testing cycle, so we're trying to push him this end as well. So yeah, Rick's going to do a few bits in there for us in a series of videos coming up soon on electrical testing. So yeah, all good.
And then we've got this one. Then another one, Electrical Installation Design Guide. Is it one of yours as well?
Yeah, last couple of editions I've put the updates in for that.
Right. Now, who would you recommend this book for?
Anybody who wants to go that next stage in designing more complex installations than the on-site guide.
Okay.
Provides us some guidance for. So
it's that step when you're ready to become the clean coat. Is it behind the desk and less on the tools?
Well, I don't know. Very useful if you're designing larger circuits.
Yeah.
It also has some very useful information to clear up some often asked questions about certain topics on the calculation side. And it also contains the latest guidance for how to calculate impedances when we're using the armour as a CPC for steel wire armour cables, and some data to accompany that's not in BS 7671.
Okay, so it's like a working guide. Is it a bit more of a working guide to it?
Well, certainly you might need to read it 2 or 3 times to try and pinpoint where everything is, put a few post-it notes in as usual and that kind of thing. But once you've been through it a couple of times, you'll know where the things are that you need most regularly.
Okay, so I think everyone needs a little bit of incentive at this stage, okay? We're going to have some of the usual stuff today. We're going to have the GT, so we're going to have Gordon's time. We've got 2 race wheels coming up on the show. We're also going to have a version of Gary's Swap Shop. To make it nice and easy for you this time, what we're going to do is we're going to have you to send in questions, so put some questions to the IET for us tonight, and at the end of it, we'll pick 2 of the best questions, and we'll send you out a mystery prize. And why I say mystery prize is when I got to Lineside Studios, Gordon hadn't dug anything out to give away, so it will be a mystery to me as well what you're getting. So fire your questions in that you'd like to ask the IT. We've also asked on a poll on YouTube as well for a survey form, and also we've got those questions that we're going to ask as well. But we want your questions in. Best 2 will receive something that would be equivalent to a Gary's Swap Shop for those ones.
And I've got to start off at 10.
Start off at 10, I like it.
It's one I've always wanted. I go on holiday, and you can, it doesn't matter what you go, mainly the continent, as you would call it, Gary, as most people call it, Europe or Spain, Italy, places like that. And the sockets in bathrooms. You can take, wife's delighted, plug hair dryers and things and in the bathroom.
They've done you again there, haven't they?
Yep. and yet we can't. So it's kind of, we know that regulations are supposed to be harmonised across the world, and it all falls down from Senilec and then into the IT, and yet we can't have a socket in a bathroom. But we have reduced it by half a metre this time out.
You see, it's not all bad news, is it?
Yeah. So is it?
Working towards it.
We're working towards it. We're working back towards the sink.
Yes, so I think so. So we took half a metre off, so we might do another half. It's a bit like when we increase in taxes, and then all of a sudden, when we get closer to the promised land, we might start taking 300 or 250 mil off a time, and eventually you'll say we can dump it there where it's handy next to the sink. And I'm sure, Mark, you would benefit from that yourself personally. Obviously, not all of us at this side will do it. So, what's the thinking by only taking a half a metre off, and can we eventually work our way to having it by the side of the sink?
Well, let's look at where it started. So back, I think we've got it. Have you got a clip somewhere of this, an image?
Yeah.
So we've gone back to the 14th edition in 1966, and this is where that's the cover. It's been scrolled on, unfortunately. It's had a life. It's had a life.
Reprinted in metric units.
That's it, in 1970.
Incorporating the 1970 amendments.
This is when it first came along, and the next image should show you the particular regulation D18 as it was then. In a room containing a fixed bath or shower, there shall be no socket outlets, and there shall be no provision for connecting a portable appliance except as provided by D19 for electric shaver and supply units. So that's where it first came along, so it was identified there's a problem there that people could be using that socket outlet for nefarious purposes.
Yeah.
And that's where it stayed. Now, in Europe, in other parts of the world, they do what they want to do. But we've had this requirement in, and there's been no real need to change it. However, over the years, what happened was we've seen hotel rooms with that big bath in the middle of the room, big room, open plan, and actually you couldn't put a socket outlet in the bathroom because it all was a bathroom, wasn't it? So what happened from there? In 2008, with the 70th edition, the 3-metre distance came in from the boundary of Zone 1. And more recently, just being nice to everyone, of course, that was reduced by a further 0.5. But that's where it comes from. It was brought in 1966, and there's been no real drive to remove it.
Okay, so I think you were saying earlier on, Graham, the regulations can't sort of overrule. If you've already got something in place, you can't really take it away. Is that what you're saying?
Well, in terms of changing regulations, yeah, you could take it away, but we'd have to think about was it less safe to do so? Is there a compelling reason to change that? So, and that information could come from statistics. That if there were any out there that showed that nobody had ever had a problem with socket outlets in bathrooms, and we do know that there have been cases in Europe of children being electrocuted with appliances falling into the bath, and RCDs won't protect you if that happens because of the way the electricity travels through water. Quite often those appliances are Class 2 appliances. There's no protective conductor anyway, so there'll be no residual current. And so difficult discussions to remove it completely, I guess. However, I suppose it's also true that a lot of most countries in the world do permit socket outlets in bathrooms. We know we go abroad and we see them in showers, in the shower cubicle itself, and there doesn't seem to be stacks of dead bodies because of this. So, you know, it's
You're teasing us. We're almost going to get one, are we? We're going to get one. You're teasing it in.
well, like I say, I'm just putting the facts as they are. Yeah. There isn't always an easy answer, and I might say this a number of times this evening. There isn't always a correct answer.
Okay. So if there was a big push then, so from JPL 64, obviously we've got them on the continent, as I like to say, and there was a big push, we could find that actually we're going to be closer to adopting what they're doing in Europe and have a socket, say, somewhere near a sink or a shelf in a bathroom then?
If that was proposed, and if the experts on the relevant technical committee, which JPL 64 has 4 expert technical committees that report to the main committee, and if they agreed it and it was agreed at JPL 64, then that could happen. But that's the way it would have to happen.
But then look at the need. Let's as we're on to this, let's discuss this then.
Hair straighteners? Just jumped at me there. I apologise. I just jumped at me there.
I'm saving up 3. 3 needs a penalty.
I couldn't hold
right. So what would be the need? What would you want to put in a bathroom? I mean, we see washing machines, don't we, with the plug cut off into a fuse connection unit. Yeah. I'm making a case for it now, aren't I?
You are? No, I'm just, again, it's almost a little bit of devil's advocate, isn't it? You know, we go, you said, you go on board, Mrs. R, she loves it, doesn't she? She's in the vicinity where she needs to be. We're not doing that thing somewhere in the room with a mirror propped up, especially on holiday, and we've got access to that socket. And we've managed to come back from all those holidays in one piece, and now you must trust the people on the continent not to throw it into the bath with a small child in there, or obviously throw it in the sink and then go and grab it. But we don't sort of give ourselves that luxury in this country. And we think, quite rightly, I think, we think ours is the safest possible. And by having it not in there, or at least considerably farther away than most, obviously we are the safest.
It could very well be, though, that the legal landscape plays a part in this. It's different in different countries. And I've mentioned there have been cases of children being sadly electrocuted in baths in France and Germany, actually, and in those cases, both of those cases, the parents were prosecuted for not supervising their children. We're not sort of pursuing an electrical contractor for not doing their job properly. Yeah. Whereas we've seen other decisions by courts in the UK, haven't we?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and we've had instances all over the places and all the rest of other things. But yeah, okay. I quite like that one. Yeah. Maybe we'll get trim another half a metre off next time. We'll get it. It's got to come down a lot more before I can even sniff one in there. So okay, we got that one in. What would you like to go next? Are we going to go in for a question, or are we going for a question? You've got plenty in there.
Oh, we've got loads in there.
Let's have a.
I mean, one just general on the regs themselves. So what prompts you to look at changing a regulation? What sort of kicks that process off? And someone said, is it academics, manufacturers, NAPIT, etc., or just feedback from electricians?
So it's really interesting, but actually all of those places potentially. So just as an example, when we carry out amendments or bring out a new edition, we have a draft for public comment, and when we receive comments, there may not be. Those comments might require an awful lot of work and thought. So we'll take those, and maybe not all of them will be incorporated or addressed for the very next amendment or change, but we can work on those comments and suggestions in the background. We've also got, of course, a lot of people who, from different parts of the industry, and they're not just working on their own things to make money, but they're also thinking about other things to improve safety in the industry, and they really are passionate about that. And they will bring papers not only in relation to their own areas of expertise, but things that touch on it that they think they can help with. And the next area is international work. Now, a lot of us that work with JPL 64 also work with in the international versions of the wiring regulations, and
Charlie up.
Yeah. So,
sorry, just say that out loud. So where would I have to fly to go to one of these other meetings, or are we now zooming them?
They can happen. They do happen all over the world.
Do they?
But quite a lot of them occur in France, Germany, Belgium, the UK. So,
Furthest you've been?
me, I've only been to meetings in Europe.
Okay. Furthest in Europe?
Germany at the moment.
Oh, right, okay, fine. Okay, yeah.
So,
yeah, okay.
But
At the moment, I like the way you did that, yeah.
well, that could change at any time, couldn't it, Mark? But with that work, we get suggestions from other countries, and eventually they become an IEC standard,
Yeah.
and then they become a Senelec harmonised standard.
And is that the point of which you're going to have to adopt it?
Yeah, now those, when the agreements that BSI have, just like with the ENs, with these harmonised documents, we take on the technical intent in the UK of that harmonised document. We can put in more onerous requirements.
Yep.
We can also have national exceptions that can be more or less onerous than the basic standard.
Do you have a certain number of those? You only got 3 exceptions you can bag, and you can have as many as you want?
We can have as many as we
Okay,
want.
brilliant, love it.
But if they're not agreed before it's published,
Right.
we would then have a particular time frame to take on the technical intent, taking into account our national exceptions.
Okay.
And those eventually work their way into BS 7671. Now, the good thing about those harmonised standards, before they become harmonised, they are put out by BSI for public comment.
Yeah.
And the important thing is that, so yes, it is true that if we have a harmonised document, we have to take the technical intent into BS 7671. That doesn't mean that professionals in the UK that are using the standard have no voice in that. They go for public comment, and you can make comments and objections at that point.
And this probably brings us to the most controversial one, probably in Amendment 2 with the AFDD. So obviously we've seen it maybe not as widespread as you think in Europe. Obviously we know the Americans have probably had it for 25 years. Their buildings are built of timber and all the rest of it. We sort of suggested the 18th edition, didn't we? We suggested the arc fault detection device, and then we specified it in 4 areas. And when we got to Amendment 2 and recommended it on socket outlets up to 32 amps on single phase installations. Was that a tough one? Was who got us to that point when before we were sort of suggesting lots more circuits for recommended when we were in the 18th, including people bouncing around on lighting circuits maybe and all the rest of it, and now we know more information about them. What got it down to those 4 locations and the recommendation on those socket outlets?
Well, do you want to answer that, Mark?
Well, when it first came in, it was focused on the type of building, the construction of the building, wasn't it? Combustible buildings, and that was the issue. Now, of course, there was a Grenfell fire, and what came out of that was it was more about protection of the devices that are on the circuit, and that's where it's focused. It's on about protection of circuits with socket outlets, and that's the focus in particular areas, in 4 particular areas.
And that's because we can plug something into it. You know, if we look at Grenfell, if it had an arc fault detection device on that, maybe there wouldn't have been the fire. We'd have had a lot of other things. Maybe the fire would have been contained in the one flat, and it wouldn't have been necessarily the disaster it was.
And this is the steer that the committee receives from organisations like HSE. If that technology is there,
yes,
and it's to a standard, it's proven globally that it works, then therefore you really should be implementing that to make installation safer.
And I totally agree with that statement. I'm a fan of AFDDs. Every circuit in my house has one not on it. But it was quite a tough thing to get even the manufacturers to admit that if you can't get carbonisation, which some wiring systems won't, that actually we're protecting the flex that enters the appliance. And we know in the locations that it's actually got to be installed in, it has a sort of an air of obviously, you know, difficult buildings to get out of and in the event of a fire. Maybe, you know, we think of student accommodation. You've sent your 2 sons through university. You've probably seen some very terrible electric heaters and temporary fridges that might have been borrowed out of someone's back garden almost in order to get to those. It makes logical sense to me where we're actually installing them. But when we have the conversation which I've had this week with people training the industry, I think the conversation with a sensible person says, yes, you would put them on socket outlet circuits. If you cherish the house in which you live in and the people in there, and it's an extra level of protection, why wouldn't you offer it? Is what I'll be on that one. Controversial though.
Probably worth remembering as well, in many appliances, particularly white goods, The cables inside are flexible, they're like tri-rated cable, if you will. So they're just insulated inside an earthed appliance, and of course they're not insulated and sheathed, so potentially there is more risk there. Also, you've got things like dishwashers where you've got the wiring loom that comes through into the door, and they're all single insulated cables, again, just insulated conductors, and with the abrasion and the opening and closing of doors, you know, there are those things there as well that there aren't in the fixed wiring installation.
Absolutely, and there's a lot of, you know, maybe vibration. You think of that washing appliance, it's going to be vibrating away. And when we talk about maybe vibration, it will bring us later on to a segment we like to call the Tesla stories, where we've got the final edition of 2022. If he ever gets rid of this car, I think I'll be more pleased than you, because there is another episode. It links nicely in there to a bit of vibration. So thank you for that segue. Okay, so we can maybe put to bed the AFDDs. I think they're a good idea. I think anything that saves potentially lives, however many lives that is, and technology can do that for us, I think it's a good idea. Same as energy management. So we've got another
well,
question.
just on AFDs, before, and obviously we know you can't speak about what's in the current hopper at the minute, but people are, you know, is there going to be an increase? You know, they're going to become sort of mandatory.
I love the way he started. He said, you can't answer this question, and then gives you a question that he'd like you to answer. Okay.
Did you see me look at my feet then?
Do we think it may have some more details, or a little bit more lines, or maybe a little bit more?
Let me answer that. Then further down the line, because no doubt the standard will be updated, because that standard is based on many other standards and they change, so therefore there's a need to update that standard. And when that happens in the future, the information that we have, because they're fairly recent addition, there isn't a lot of data out there. My first experience of AFDDs was in PV installation, so I was going out to meetings in Europe in sort of the mid-2000s, and this is when AFDDs, it really made sense to me that if the kid next door kicks the football, lands on your roof, cracks the PV, it starts to arc, it really makes sense. These arc fault detection devices pick up on this problem.
So apologise. It's kicked the football over your fence. Well, you got a twin and earth cable clipped to the outside of your building. What's happening? So what's cracked?
It lands on the PV on the roof.
PV, sorry. PV on the roof. Okay,
Lands on the PV on the roof. Sorry, I'll slow down a bit.
No.
It's my northern accent.
No, don't apologise for it. Gordon hasn't yet. So,
so it really makes sense. There are devices that work and perform a particular function.
Yeah.
So from there, that's what I was first exposed to AFDDs, and they've grown from there. In the States, they became popular because those shoddy receptacles and plugs that they use. You go on holiday and you plug your phone charger in, it falls out, so you prop it up with a shoe, and it starts to arc.
Apparently, breaking news.
And then, but there you are. But in the States, what was put over to me was in the States, they're very, they're like their drapes. The drapes around the windows, etc., along the walls. And the receptacles were behind there, and fires were starting because of that particular issue, the arcing that was going on. So rather than address the problem with their receptacles, sticking plaster approach. But that's really my understanding. That's my exposure to them. That's where they grew from.
So we thought it was more because it was timber framed. Obviously, you know, the minute you get
once you do get in those buildings, yes, that's right. Yeah.
And in solar panels, they're actually built into the inverters, aren't they? Arc fault detection on the DC side, is that?
They're starting to be now, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, well, the adopters, what a shame.
Yeah, but it makes sense because the DC arcing's a bigger problem for people as well, isn't it? Yeah. So it's and I think look, as soon as it first came in, I went on Amazon US, obviously that well-known online retailer that does next day free delivery.
What, from America, does it?
Yeah, you can actually. You can buy it
Really?
from America. Yeah, that's where we get the American tools from.
Yeah, but not next day.
No, not next day, and you can obviously get clobbered for customs charges. But you look at the cost of an AFDD in the US, $30. You can get one.
They look a little bit agricultural.
They look like a Crabtree C50 device from, but that's most Americans.
$30.
Goes with those receptacles, which aren't, you're right. American wire accessories look awful as well, so blends in with the aesthetic, Harry.
However, they don't have the pleasure of getting up in the middle of the night, go to the bathroom and standing on the upturned plug with the 3 pins sticking in you.
They don't though, because they can plug in the bathroom, you see, so they haven't got the long trail and lead.
Breaking news, Amendment 3. So it's in bathrooms. Okay, so that's good. I think there's something that the audience would love us to address. Really would love us to address. Now, throughout the year, there's 12 months. And as the months pass by, there's certain events that happen. So, for example, being Apple will launch a new phone, okay? There'll be Santa Claus will turn up for small children, okay? Things like that. People may celebrate an anniversary or two. And then there's a day in the calendar that eFIXX really loves, a day that's sort of starts April off, okay? And we like to have a little bit of fun here. And maybe this time we got a little bit like too close to the fire, I would suggest, and maybe got our little fingers burnt a bit, because we believed that on April the 1st that there was a launch of a new cable, the 0.5 millimetre squared twin and earth. I called it twin and earth because that should have been the first big flag. And we suggested that that cable might be associated with a breaker, an E-type breaker, one for electronic devices, because we know that those lights and things like that might be attached to it have an electronic bias. And we then maybe had a little bit, no, let's not say us. We're not going to say who did it, okay? Joe Robinson changed the pages in BS7671 and the on-site guide, okay? We didn't do that. We weren't clever enough to do that. And we used those pages. And you sort of found out pretty quickly we may have overstepped the line. Mark?
Yes, dear.
Would you like to comment?
Yeah, okay. On the morning in question, my lord, I was in a meeting online, and I'm at the screen, etc. My phone is beside, and it's ringing. It's going mad and messages, and I couldn't answer it, of course. So eventually, I brought for coffee.
Yeah.
And the quick.
Did you have that or tea?
In that instance, you're right, my lord. Yes, it was tea. Yes.
So already the story's looking a little bit ropey. Inconsistencies
fair enough.
between.
We generally collectively broke for coffee, but I had tea. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fine.
So, if you permit me, when I got into my phone, the first message I saw, there's a problem with the on-site guide. Oh dear. But by that time, you see, that the IT technical helpline and the reception had received numerous calls, people talking about this particular issue. I've just seen this video, and it's got this particular cable and break. It's not in my book. What's going on? Immediately we thought there must be some kind of counterfeit going on out there. Oh. But by that point,
so it had gone. So it was suggested then there was somebody out there in the world counterfeiting BS7671, but we know him as Joe. Okay, fine, carry on.
Okay. Because IT has knowledge of counterfeit publications in the past, you see. So it's a real threat. It's a real threat. So it had gone right round the building, gone to the top. When it gets to the top, with IT being a charity, it triggers a particular mechanism, and that mechanism is under the, because again, I think it's the Charitable Commission, correct me if I'm wrong, someone, but it triggers a report, and the report, they get lawyers involved because there's a threat to the business, perceived threat to the business, perceived threat to the charity, the employees, the volunteers, and the product of the body, and we have to do something about it, and a report was commissioned. Now, at that point, it was too late to say, it's just a joke. But it was very good, by the way.
It was very good. So if we'd have stuck with just the cable and the breaker then, and we didn't have Joe forge the paperwork, okay, we'd have been all right. Oh, dear Joe. Dear Joe. I don't think that's a blue plaque. That's a platinum blue plaque. That would be. Have you got the cable in question? Can we dare to revisit it?
This is the only one that ever existed in the world.
What, 0.5?
It's the E-type breaker.
Let's have a quick look.
Only available in Type 2. Must stress there for those low energy circuits.
So 2 amps. Type A. And you notice I'm not very close to. Shall I come in a little bit closer?
Yeah, you can go in closer.
Well, that looks remarkably like a B, doesn't it?
Looks like the B's been taken off.
Oh, yeah. And so maybe it was a 20. But if you're here, it looks like an E-type. Yeah, and twin. How did you make that?
Well, this was stripped out of a fluorescent ballast and all, put this 0.5 wire in. You'd know that if you've made light fittings in the past.
And you threaded it, did you, back through?
Re-threaded it through the outer of a 1mm.
You've too much time on your hands, haven't you?
We did it actually pretty quick. Actually, we're amazed ourselves actually how it just sort of
Because it had to have a certain rhythm to it. That video, we actually did it in one take. So when we started to go, we said it doesn't matter what happens now. It's got to go through because you couldn't reenact the moment. So we had a plug with a plug with a piece of twin and earth cable on, didn't we?
Yeah.
We used all the wrong words. We called it twin and earth. We said lamp. No, we didn't. We said bulb and not lamp, and I would never say that, and things like that. So we tried to leave all these Easter eggs in through it, but it was Joe's forgery paperwork that caused us all the problems.
Us under the bus,
oh,
Gary.
dear me.
But,
yeah.
I think It was about 11 minutes long, wasn't it? And people were getting to sort of 10 and a half and not waiting to the final clincher.
Can you think of anyone that we all know? And of course, I think you even mentioned him. Believe it or not today, folks, it's been fantastic. You've actually both taken on the Electrician's Challenge. And you can't say you now know your times. It's been revealed to you and we've recorded that footage. But you looked at the board and I heard a certain name being mentioned that you certainly would like to be above, somebody you've worked with in the past. What name was that?
Shahid Khan.
Yeah, so you wanted to be above Shahid.
And Paul Elcock as well.
Paul Elcock, yeah, very competitive, yeah, in that circles. Yes, and it even caught him out. And what does Shahid work with you two? Is he on any of the committees? Was he involved?
Yes.
He was involved in, was it a secret club now? So we can't say, we knew Shahid was in it, so we got the handshake. Go on, do the handshake.
Which handshake?
The IET handshake, you know the one?
Oh,
the secret one.
You that one.
No, you showed me it earlier. It's typical, isn't it? There's always a funny handshake in these places. So Shahid was part of it, and he rang me up on the day it was released and hadn't watched the last 90 seconds. He believed it was true, and he actually was part of the process. So that was good. Have we been forgiven yet?
Oh, yes.
That was not convincing at all. Ah, yes. We're true.
I mean, we was quite interested for us because it showed us, people should always watch the end of a video. That was the first bit because it was in plain, everything was in plain sight.
And that's probably where we hid it.
But it shows how in this industry things spread,
yeah,
isn't it? And people, just by getting half a story, and we've been on about it today in a lot of these new industries that are coming out.
We can actually reveal today it was a case study, actually. It was a piece of social experimentation, wasn't it?
That was it. It was all set up to see how far can we get this to go.
Yeah. But also, again, I was down at Ludin Palazzoni on the day it was released. They got phone calls about the breaker. We know Aaron, #Above for our race wall. He was all about, he got phone calls from wholesalers saying, why hasn't they been indicated this 0.5 twin and earth cable? Even sounds hard to say it now, but yeah, it just shows you quickly that people see half a story and sort of running with it. A lot of people said that 0.5mm cable would be a good idea as well. Low loads.
Less copper.
Less weighing in though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Imagine stripping that out in 15 years' time and get nothing for it, would you? Well, you might do now. Yeah. Commodity price is going through the roof. Mm. Yeah. So that's it. So we've addressed it. We promised we would, and we thank you very much for addressing it with us. We are forgiven, hopefully. So have we got any questions that might be winning prizes?
Oh, we've got a lot. Hold on. So is there an Amendment 3?
That we can't answer at the moment.
Right,
there will be an announcement as to what the next amendments are going to be, or the next edition, as soon as we have agreement on that.
Okay, is that like a borderline thing? You go, what tips the balance between just doing an amendment and a full?
Let me answer this. The 18th edition, when it came along, the 18th edition was all about the future, the smart, the energy efficient world that we were heading into. So it's unlikely that they'll, my belief here, it's unlikely there will be a 19th edition anytime soon because we're still in the throes of what the concept of the 18th was.
Yeah, right. And you can't count Amendment 1, can you? I mean, you just can't count that as anything. So Amendment 2 obviously had. I must admit, Amendment 2 was probably the best ever amendment ever. I mean, because I was looking at it from a college lecturer's point of view, and all my notes nearly, apart from your bathroom, stayed intact. So I wouldn't have to toss them all out the window and start again. So I only had to move half a metre in, so it's all good. So, that's how I look at it. It's terrible looking at it from them point of view. So reading between the lines, yes, there'll be an Amendment 3, and yes, there will be a date coming soon. So we've read that one.
But is that because, is technology, Amendment 1 came out pretty quick. Was that because technology with EVs was moving pretty quick at the time? Or was it just...
Yes, really. It was all about... allowing other technology to come along to enable you to provide a safe installation for use by whoever needs it. Mm-hmm. And you're more involved in that line of work than I am, but that's where it came from.
I mean, there were, it's no secret in the industry that there were difficulties with a lot of EV installers trying to install earth electrodes.
Yeah.
And that in itself, caused a lot of debate as well. So it's a number of these things coming together is what makes people decide, well, yeah, okay, we need to make this an amendment.
Yeah.
So that leads me nicely into the next one. So if it was difficult to start hammering in an earth electrode for an EV, and I do a bit of an upgrade, a bit of a change, maybe do a full refurbishment, I mean, I've got to recommend I bang one outside for that, which sounds remarkably like an earth electrode out the front there and make a connection to earth.
Very interesting question. Recommendations are not requirements.
Okay, yeah, but you've recommended on it. You recommended in the 18th edition of AFDDS, and then you required it in the Amendment 2, didn't you?
Yeah, but I can only use the words that the standard uses, and how people interpret those words is
You're given a handy table now, though, to try and help us understand the clarity of the word recommended. And what word does that get replaced with in a sentence? Does it get replaced with? So recommended.
It should, isn't it?
Should.
Should,
That
or
sounds a bit stronger. That or what?
option is another word.
Is that what you're saying about?
Just for the record, again, my lud.
Yeah. Who came up with that table anyhow? Do we know who came up with that one?
Well,
Joe Robinson.
Robinson.
Yeah, that was it, yes.
He did the other tables,
Yes,
didn't he?
I should
The
know
fraudulent
which is,
ones.
yes.
He's going to love that.
Oh, yeah.
they're not. The
Let's go over to regulation corner where Joe
There we are. Recommendation should, so I was right. Thank you.
I've said it all day, so well done for
Yes,
taking me.
I have been saying it all day.
So I'm just thinking there, so if I'm doing a major refurbishment, or, I should do something.
Remember,
That sounds quite strong to me.
so going back
should.
a few years ago, so pre-COVID, couple of years pre-COVID, IT had put some money into foundation earth electrode research.
Right.
So a number of sites around the country, meaning different soils, these it was sort of 3 inch by 3 mil or 2 inch by 3 mil copper earth tape. Might got the size wrong, but it was essentially a ring in the foundation, which was cast in concrete, and then 2 connections come up from there, which would connect to the main earthing terminal.
Right.
And then tests were carried out to see what was going on and good connections to earth. And from there, it didn't fly. It didn't fly in terms of incorporating that in BS 7671, just with the comments that were received at DPC stage. But what was recommended at the time was it would be a good idea for new installations to have an earth electrode, so that when they move over to fully prosuming installations, you have an electrode there which would allow you in island mode to have a connection to earth for your electrical supply.
But that got hokey-cokeyed out of the 18th edition because that was for public draft and went back out again, didn't it?
That's right.
So it didn't get in at all.
No.
So it got in this time round, which sounds familiar, doesn't it? It's a bit like the AFDDs, and now they're in. So Amendment 3's coming. So now you're saying we should do this. We should put it in because you're more considering that islanding mode. Maybe because I think it was perceived that was being put in maybe as part of the pen fault protection to have your own earth electrode, which then sort of suggested I'm going to have to have quite a low, I know we've got a lot of RCDs about that conversation as well, but I'm going to have quite a low ohm reading for that, but there wasn't one. But you're saying I should, but we'll use the word recommended, and you said you don't have to, but I think should's a stronger word. It's one of those, you see how electricians, and we're all electricians, but you get a little bit frustrated, don't you? Because sometimes and I know you can't, but sometimes you just want a little bit of clarity. I'm doing a major refurbishment, I've got to install this earth electrode, and then effectively that earth electrode is there, and it's there because of maybe we go for islanding mode when we get a battery system, etc.
But remember, it's a standard. It isn't a code of practice in itself. It's like a recipe. It's a standard to work to get the same result every time you go through it. Now, beyond that, if you're looking for more clarity, that's where guidance comes in. And all the organisations put guidance together for that particular purpose. So why would I need an electrode here? Well, reading particular publications will guide you towards that.
Absolutely, yeah, totally agree with that. But you can just see the frustration though, can't you? You can see the frustration on the contractor's part. We're simple characters, we just really want an answer. And we understand the bigger picture, we're not naive enough not to. But again, that would be a classic example for me. You said in one breath we've taken it off the EV charger and we're smashing them around, and then we've said that in a major refurbishment, really, we should be considering putting one in. Comes back.
Really, that's an end user as well, isn't it? Because how many times, we know what's coming down the road, isn't it? Electric cars are going to be everywhere. And my classic was a neighbour, he's putting up a garage. I said, you should put a cable in for an EV charger. Oh, don't want to do that. 2 years later, he's got an EV.
He's dug the garden up.
Digging the path up again. So that is the most expensive cable you didn't put in. And we now look at storage. A lot of people have got solar panels. They're talking about battery. Then, for the first time ever this week, I got an email from the DNO under their sort of...
Not from Bulb this week, no?
No, it wasn't from Bulb, no.
We'll come back to that.
That's still ongoing on that one. But the DNO, from the stakeholder group, because I feed into the Northern Power Grid one, they're starting to talk about rotor blackouts. It's basically, if there is a power shortage... It's already prescribed into the way that DNOs work. I didn't realise everybody's assigned a letter You've got a secret letter you can see on your energy bill that tells you when your power would be cut off in those circumstances.
Oh, right.
And there's 18 groups. I'm in S. And I might do a video on it because there's a chart that shows you when they would do the blackout.
Oh, no, you've given that away. Somebody's now doing the research. We can do that. It sounds good. So we've got. So is it in alphabetical order? Is that why you're chuffed? Because you're S?
No. It's a randomised thing. It distributes it, but you can see in the future, people, power security, renewables, whatever Putin's doing. You've got that islanded mode, isn't it? You're protecting yourself. And it's putting that, and you do need the earth rod in there if you want to run as an island.
Yeah.
And so I would say it's sensible.
Well, one thing I want to say, I mean, you've used the word earth rod.
Yeah.
Something else that's come out of all of the research we've done into EV installations and other things is actually, people, the first thing people think about, mainly because they're cheap, if I want an earth electrode, I'm going to bang a rod in. Now, there are other types of earth electrode, and particularly if we have difficult installation conditions, it might be far better to look at those other options. But also, you can't always detect what's underground. But
you can when you hit it.
Well, exactly.
You've detected it then, haven't you?
Now, if I have something like an earth mat or conji disc,
yes,
and I can dig down between 450 and 600 mil, a couple of spades depths, that's far different than trying to work out what's going to be a number of meters below the ground.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Putting an electrode in, and by the time you've tried to find out what's under there, gone through a few soil pipes and that kind of thing, you might, in the long run, find it far more cost effective to spend a bit more on the earth electrode itself, and it's easier to install and deal with. So
totally agree.
We've got that guidance available now as well, on top of...
Oh, where's that one hidden? Which book?
Which one you wrote now? Plug in another one you wrote, okay. Okay, well, we're going to look through the books. Let's thank the great people that helped put this on the screen, okay? We understand you've given up the semi-finals of the World Cup in order to watch this, and we gratefully thank you for that. Or you might be getting on catch-up because you are watching it. I think it flashed up earlier on. It is France leading by 1-0, Dave.
2-0 now, Gary.
Oh, 2-0 now. I didn't see it go to 2-0. So we've got a decent final coming up, but we'd like to thank the great people at Marshall Tufflex, Luden Palazzoli, great friends at Vargo. We'd like to thank our friends at My Energy. And I'm just running out of a little bit of spittle now.
Doncaster Cables.
Okay, yeah, gone for Aaron at Doncaster Cables,
Yep.
yeah. And it's easy to read it off the wall, isn't it, rather than trying to remember the people that support this great show that we try and put on fortnightly. How we do?
It's good.
It's good. It's good. There we go. We've got more questions.
Oh, yeah, we're not finished yet.
No, we're going to be here forever. So, yeah.
We'll have another question, then we'll take the first bit of the challenge one.
We're going to do a GT. Yeah. We need to ask some times, then.
Yeah, we will do. But,
you notice Gordon's wearing his heated jacket? Yeah, we're toughing it out here, aren't we, Mark? Yeah. Okay, and what was the word you said when he walked in with his heated jacket on? You went carpenter, didn't you? You said it reminds me on site of those carpenters woofing around with a bit of a heated jacket on, not doing much. You said carpenter. So come on, carpenter.
Hold on, that's one of your questions. You've answered that one. Hold on.
Well, you're lucky to have me, lads.
Right. Oh, here we go. So, do you think that BS 7671 should be pushing back a bit on what seems to be like the constant additions of regulations to seemingly cover the external DNO failing, such as supplementary earth electrodes and covering broken pen conductors? So,
It is an interesting question.
And it's one we're going for next.
Yeah, so I think, I suppose the first thing is, can the DNOs replace all of their faulty cable?
That sounds like their kind of problem.
It does, but there's miles and miles of the stuff. It would take many years for that to happen. If we want to see a difference now, a point of view could be that we could do things to limit the impact. That is just a point of view. I'm not saying it's my opinion, but it is a point of view that's often put across. If you can do something to make something safer, why shouldn't you do it?
And a couple of years ago, I had a conversation with Dr. Chris Horn from My Energy, and the technology we've got in the Zappy 2 EV chargers, maybe slightly different to other people's. It's not a plug for them in any way. They're the sponsor of the show. Yeah. And I said to him, well, hang on a minute, if this technology is in your device that can detect a broken pen conductor, why don't the DNOs mandate that it goes next to the meter? So they take ownership of their own problem by installing your technology and stop doing the half effort that we're probably making, because you said that we're trying to make it a better. That suggests to me that if we don't quite get it right, that maybe somebody won't survive an incident, and that seems unacceptable to me, any more than in France when those hair dryers entered into the bath or etc. So why don't they take ownership and they put the technology that's clearly available and put it into their meter box? If they can move the consumer unit out and all the other stuff that we've rammed in there recently, and then put that in and next to the meter, and then the problem's gone away.
That's a question for the DNOs, really. But I guess some of that might boil down to cost and practicability. I mean, how long would it take to install that technology on 29 million properties?
Yeah. Okay, but if we don't start, we'll never finish, will we?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those. Yes. Yeah. We've changed. Yeah, simple one. We've changed cable colours over. It'll take. I'll be gone twice before we ever get round again. We've introduced different protection levels. Even we can still find socket circuits not on RCDs. How long has that been?
Of course we can.
So again, unless we start, we can never finish, can we? It's one of them.
Absolutely.
And it's not your fault, by the way.
No.
Graham, I'm to your door.
But really, I mean, a point is, if we are seeing a risk increasing because of certain technology, then if when that technology is installed, something could be done at that point, we're not waiting many years for the DNO to come to make it safe by trying to install it in 20 odd million properties, and that's just dwellings. We've got 20 odd million dwellings in the UK.
Yeah.
So that's just a thought. It's not. There is no right answer.
It's the same thing. Yeah, if you can't fix your cables, you're not going to deploy 29 million new service heads.
Yeah.
Which is what it would be, isn't it?
Again, but let's come back to there is a solution out there. We decided not to do that one, so we've got other things, and we got the broken pen fault problem. You got 3 houses side by side, L1, L2, and L3. L1's got a nice metal water pipe coming into it for some reason. Let's make it a scenario. Broken pen before that property. It actually then becomes the neutral return conductor for the other 2 properties. Mm-hmm. And obviously, that green and yellow cable whiffs have been taken off, doesn't it, by a plumber or maybe an electrician, etc. And actually, the second it's released from its connection, it's the neutral of the other 2 properties, and you're holding on to the metal pipework. We've introduced a major problem there for the electrician. We know back at Guidance Notes 3, there's some really great information about making that safe. And we know our good friend Andy at Safe for September, the old Safe Isolation, along with Eddie, they've been pushing a lot of this stuff. That you're looking at green and yellow conductor now, but maybe we need to be sort of rethinking what that is. I know everybody calls it an earth. We obviously know it's got loads of different names, but that is a potentially live conductor until proved otherwise, isn't it?
Well, don't forget that a protective conductor is only a protective conductor, or can only act as such, when it's connected to the earthing arrangement. If we were to take a CPC off at the supply end, then we may very well get leakage currents, if you will, from noise filters on Class 1 appliances and so on. And again, that's something that we need to think about. It was safe, now we've disconnected it, and it may be hazardous. So we can't think that a protective conductor, certainly in a live installation or a live network, is always safe to disconnect. To keep us safe whilst it's connected.
And that's regardless of pen faults. That's in
absolutely.
any installation.
Because if you go back to you said your Class 1 Class 1 equipment with the filters in, exactly the same thing. Ignoring a pen fault protection, I disconnect that, you're potentially saying that it's going to be live.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, we had this conversation off camera, so it feels like you've joined us on that one. Again, do you believe there's enough education and enough training out there, and I'm sure Andy's big on this, for us to be now looking at a green and yellow conductor and looking at it differently? And not looking at it as a protective conductor, but actually as a potentially live conductor, and the measures that go about disconnecting and testing for it. I know it's in the back of Guidance Notes 3, and I know people like Residual Current have also made some good videos on it.
Well, I think the AET's position is that more information is needed out there, and that's why that's in Guidance Note 3.
Yeah, but I don't think it's. I know Mark Allison's tried as well, but Yeah, I certainly know from a college aspect, it ain't even been mentioned that it could be live.
It's not part of the regs, is it?
No, I know it
It's
isn't.
isolation
Yeah,
procedure.
I know it isn't. I know, and it's under your electricity and work regulations, all the rest of it. But where do we really take the initial information we ever get? We're starting on that journey, don't we? There's no better time to get that information into you. Wouldn't it, it's going to happen. It'll be tragic when somebody disconnects it, whether it be a plumber or electrician or even just pulls it out. It wasn't in a crimp and they pull it out. A small child happens to be just there, catches a protected bonding conductor because it wasn't lugged. There's an incident waiting to happen, isn't it? We don't want it to happen. That's what we're saying. It is difficult. Maybe labelling needs to be different. Is that something that, consideration? Like we say, safety electrical connection, plumbers do not remove, was that effect, doesn't it? That's what it says. It does say plumbers though, doesn't it? Yeah, so, But again, just, what's up, Rick? What's a little giggle from Rick? Yeah?
Well, I mean, we'd be happy when, for people to make those suggestions when...
Well, when I join JPO 64, I can.
Draft for public comment to come out.
How do I get on? Come on, let's do that one. How do I get on? How do I join the boys' club? How do I roll up with a set of golf clubs? As we had that earlier, didn't we? You had, who is this?
Yes, off I went down the golf club, yes. There's more chance of him here.
You don't look like a golfer, Mark.
It's actually a very open process.
Okay, I'm in.
BSI website.
Yeah, but I'm in with you, Graham. I'm in, aren't I? It's like bring your mates along, isn't it? It's like,
Definitely not.
No. So how would I get on? Let's be serious about it.
BSI website.
Yes.
You can apply to join a committee.
Right.
And that is, you literally apply through that process.
So job in Spark could get on.
So normally we would look at the BSI, in this BSI's rules that we work with, would be looking at an organisation to sponsor somebody, although you can be an individual expert, be nominated as an individual expert as well through BSI. So that is the process, and at the end of the day, yes, anybody could apply.
So we could get Gordon on. We could sponsor Gordon, get him on there. He's on. He's keen as mustard. He wants to go on. He loves a committee, does he? You're looking at me like you don't, and I know that's the look of I really want to go on, Gaz.
So I suppose the question is, how does BSI then decide?
Yeah. Who? Yeah.
Who does
Is
this?
it the black ball thing? Is it?
It's the smoke coming out.
You've got the wrong club there, I think.
Don't mention club. He's already gone there. He said there's no chance of me playing off. Let's say I work for a large manufacturer. Let's pick one nice, Eaton or somewhere like that. I've got more chance of getting on being sponsored by Eaton to get on through that.
Remember that it's more about a body, like a trade body. So BEMA would be the organisation that represents those that make switchgear. For example, you've got Gambika, which is test instruments. You've got Amdia, which is appliances. You've got the common person scheme providers, HSE. They have their bodies. So individuals, if an individual wanted to be on the committee, it's through a body, or they have a particular skill that doesn't exist already. Because you could bring lots of people in and populate a committee with all the same kind of person. There's no diversity. There's no difference. So the committee isn't benefiting. So it needs to be something. Right now, there's 75 possible people overall. To have them all around the table doesn't work.
But apart from maybe an APIT and NRC and the rest of it, who's representing? This is what they'll be saying. So who's representing the guy or girl in the van?
Look in page. Is it page 9 or page 8? You've got the list of the who to blame section, as it's often referred to. But you'll find if you're registered with NAPIT, if you're registered with Searchura, they are representing your interests.
So I apologise, I haven't gone over to Searchura, have I? I've left it with the old name. I apologise. It's old things die hard.
Well,
And to be fair, the AET have
IET member, IET member, IET represents its members.
Nothing at all to stop electricians joining the AET. In fact, we'd like that.
Yeah, good.
They can become engineering technicians and can become members of the AET. So they can be registered with the Engineering Council as well.
So if they've joined Twitter, that doesn't count. No?
I don't. That's the person that runs Twitter.
Okay. Second richest man in the world. Talking of the richest man in the world, is it now we've mentioned the Tesla, would it be time before we go to the race wall to have our new edition of.
No, 'cause it's not
it
that
is.
good.
It's time. Bring it up. Bring it up. Let's bring it up. It's time for the Tesla stories. It's a lovely segue into. Remember to get your times in, Gordon, and give a shout out for the times. It's the Tesla stories.
Yeah. Okay, well, before I get there, on what's happened this week. Coming up soon, we have got the guys from CNOM taking on the Electricians Challenge. And the first person up is Luke.
It is Luke, yeah.
It is Luke, who brought his lunchbox along with him. Thank God he didn't bring a lunchbox with him, because you would never heard the end of it, which his mum made up from, or looked like his mum had made up from.
Yeah, that's terrible.
So put your time in for how quickly will Luke complete the Electricians Challenge. Now, just remember, he was on the tools before he joined the...
How long?
For about 5 years, wasn't he?
No, he was apprentice for 4 and on the tools for
2, was it?
12 months.
12 months. 5 years. Okay, 5 years experience-ish. So will he be fast? Will he be slow? And he did bring some new tools with him.
He did, and I gave them away. I gave them away to a really good learner that we found at Nottingham College this week. So I gave them to him, presented them, and I signposted that on Instagram.
I did. So put your times in, minutes and seconds, and we'll wrap it up at the end.
Been stalling, hasn't he?
Yeah.
I didn't think we'd get another one in. I'll give you a little sneak peek. When I went out about a week and a half ago, one of Gordon's side lot of wheel arch trims had just popped off slightly, and it wouldn't have taken much of me just to give it a little firm tap with my palm of my hand. And I looked at it and I thought, this is not like me, and I wouldn't do it. But I did this time. I went, if I don't tap that back, there's a good chance in this dark weather it's going to fly off. And you've lost a few of them, haven't you?
I've lost the one, on the passenger side twice. I've lost the wheel arch, just dropped off in the rain. That's what happens. But this time I did spot it. Before I went to Northumberland, we got that bloody wheel arch is going to drop off again. So I just gave it a whack myself, and thankfully that has stayed.
So of course I brought it up with you today, and then you had to admit it's going in this week, isn't
Tomorrow.
it? Tomorrow. What's wrong with it now?
There's a vibration underneath on the drive chain somewhere.
So it's rattling away.
Rattling at sort of low speed. It sounds like if you had an exhaust.
Yeah.
Remember when you exhaust on your car? When there used to be little like exhaust mounts at the back. It used to sort of waggle. Yeah.
So you're telling me now, so it's under warranty, yeah?
No.
It's not under warranty?
No, it's not under
So it's
warranty.
another paid job you've got to put onto that car.
Yeah.
So you're saying you've bought the Tesla, yeah? You've gone all in. You went battery 4 years ago, was it? 4.5 years ago?
Yeah.
And it's broke again.
Yeah.
There's only about 200 moving parts on there.
There is.
Has it got a whiff of Trigger's broom?
It is a bit like, it is becoming a bit like Trigger. Thank God they don't have more than 200 parts on them. So that's tomorrow. Well, we'll find out next after Christmas.
Well, I'm hoping we put these to bed at some point. You've either got to get rid of the car or, I don't know. So it's making an awful noise. We don't know how much it's going to cost. It could be big money, and you're having it repaired tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe we'll do an Instagram post tomorrow, find out how much that's going to set you back.
Or perhaps tune into one of the videos we release next week, and you'll see what my face looks like.
Total thunder.
If I'm all full of the joys of spring, it was a minor incident.
A few rivets that needed to be put back in.
Yeah.
Okay. That's brilliant. I think that's a nice segue. We got some times coming in, folks. Have we got any times coming in? Yeah, we've got enough times in to go in. We're going to see Luke from CNOM, aren't we? Who was a 5 minutes electrician.
It's time for another Electricians Challenge. Now, it's always fantastic when we get the manufacturers behind the equipment we love to use along to try out this challenge. It's my pleasure to introduce Ian Lockley and Luke Carter from CNOM. So, Ian, good to see you.
Gordon.
Luke. I must congratulate you because you've managed to bring the most amount of equipment we've ever seen brought along for a challenge.
Well, thank you very much. We've got nothing left in the warehouse now, mind.
Yeah, and I must say some of it looks a little bit specialist.
There's one or two there for specialist applications, yes. It's not just run-of-the-mill standard plugs and sockets we're into.
So CNOM, obviously we know, but there's also, we see a lot of products have got bowels on there.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Bowels is our German partner. We've been working with them now since the early 90s for over 30 years. Long-standing relationship. They are the manufacturer of the industrial plugs and sockets, and we're a distributor in the UK for them.
Yeah, and then you've got other bits and pieces we've seen, like these. These were quite interesting. We've seen
Yep.
sort of, the emergency cable reel.
That's it. That's available from a company called Cable Caddy that CNOM owns. We acquired the business in 2014, and they run the Marcaddy brand, which people will be aware of.
That's good. Yeah, I mean they're all good, and then some little specialist boxes there for distribution equipment.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
So business good at the moment.
Not too bad, thank you. Not too bad. Keeping right above water, as they say.
Yeah. So, coming to people's backgrounds, obviously we're like to do an electrician's challenge. Luke would believe you've got history.
Yeah, I started as an apprentice electrician.
Yep.
Passed, got my JIB card and whatnot, and then ended up joining CNOM
in a production role. Went on to the testing side of the business, and now I'm doing the quotes on the project side of the business. So designing, enclosures like this, quoting them, and
yeah. So do you find your obviously knowledge and coming through from the tools? Does that help?
yeah, I can apply what I've learned on site to what I do now, and obviously it helps when you're talking to contractors and people like that, trying to picture the job and what they're asking for.
So how long have you been off the tools now?
I've been off the tools. I've been out of contracting for 10 years.
Right.
But I've been off the tools for about 8 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh well, we'll see how that plays out. And Ian, your background?
I joined CNORM over 24 years ago. Started out as production manager, went to the sales office because I wanted a slightly warmer environment. Took on the sales office manager's role, operations managers, and then nearly 2 years ago, the founder of the company retired and they made me MD.
Right, well, that's great. It's great to see that there seems to be, is that a culture in the business?
Yeah, we try and promote from within. Yeah,
Yeah.
we can.
Oh, well, that's good. So you're a background, so you started in the production. You never been on the tools?
I'd done a couple of years panel wiring, but not contracting like Luke, no.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, it's always used to warm environments with your panel wiring.
Oh, yes, yeah. Like that with the transformers. So.
Well, let's see how he got on with the electrician's challenge.
Luke's put down his lunchbox long enough to take on the electrician's challenge.
Yeah, now Luke has been off the tools for quite some time. He's a qualified electrician and he's brought some new tools that they actually distribute. So this could go horribly wrong.
It could, but as I look down, they look really fresh and nice. I might ask if I can take them to a college in the future, but let's see how he gets on with them. They might not be worth taking.
Yeah, that's it. So anyway, it looks like a competent start. Yes, plodding away nicely there.
Yeah, I always find these reels are difficult, especially when they're really long.
Oh, it's the new reels. Yeah, it's fallen foul of the new
Oh,
reels.
it still has.
Oh
dear.
dear, that can cost a lot of time. So let's just see what's going to happen here. Is he going to go for the tape or just a twist?
Okay, there we go. This is important. So even though you lost it,
He's gone for the tape.
Yeah, it's gone for the tape. So it doesn't look as if he's going flat out to me, I would suggest.
Well, he's now in the office environment, isn't it? So he's possibly a little bit rusty. Those tools aren't rusty, but possibly Luke is.
Right, up the tube first time, round the Seco bend and into the Luden consumer unit. This is decent apart from the twisting of the cables, obviously, on those drums. So come on, we can do it. It's not the tallest. Do we think the little Nick Ramo's going to come into play on this one?
I don't know. We'll see what happens. He did give us some blood in an earlier run through this, as he decided to part company with some skin and leave blood all over the rig.
Yeah, we can see that from his index finger there, that obviously it was all taped up, but he's going on, he's soldering on, and remember, this is his fastest time, so it wasn't the one where he drew claret. Okay, he ain't very tall though, is he? He's properly low down on that board.
And clearly been off the tools a while because he just would have used insulation tape for that cut and carried on.
Yeah, he would. Yeah, he was wandering around looking for the first aid kit, and we're looking for it still here at Lineside Studios.
All right, so in with these cutters.
He's doing a bit of a JB, so he's gone along, so he hasn't forgot everything that he learned when he was on the tools. He's quite good at this. He just a little nip. I think it's got the little slot in it, so it just.
There is.
off.
Now I tried when I was. I actually went through the run through with them on this, Gary. I couldn't quite get the grips of those cutters, but I think with a bit of practice that could be a little handy feature.
So you're suggesting Luke's got it in the hands of a professional, but when you had it, it was in the hands of an amateur.
Yeah, well, that's it. I've been away from the tools for quite some time.
Been away from everything for quite some time, so we've just got to connect that socket outlet up. He's sticking to the one screwdriver, which I think is the best way forward, but of course we've got to get two in one hole here. How long is this going to take him? Yep, we're in and doing it. So we're a couple of terminations away from completing the electrician's challenge. Line conductor next. Also concentrating. He hasn't smiled once during this, has he? Not even a glimmer.
No. Well, after spending a few hours with you, Gary, I don't blame him. Oh no, there was a little smile there, I think, sneaking out.
I think that was a little bit of trap wind from them sandwiches he'd had earlier on.
The screws are in the right place. This should be good. He's using the screwdriver to get it in.
Top tip.
Done. Yep, a top tip.
Okay, so we're one screw away. So on the floor as well.
No,
so
he
it's
must have dropped that one there. It was on the box the last time I saw it.
It was found without even looking almost. Yeah.
Well, that'll be good. And we'll be back with the second half of that when his boss takes it on.
But we're not doing a combined time, it's individual time. Somebody has just got that written down over here, so someo's won a prize already.
That's it.
And we haven't done the register yet, so we'll wait for Joe Jr. to come back and we'll slide the register in at some point. So if you're on, you're sending in your comments, you're hopefully liking the video and all the rest of it, we'll give you a register call out as well. as Junior moves in now, so we should be in a good position.
We've had a good question in from Gadget Man, who also
Gadget
sent us a
Man.
super chat. So
Oh, did he?
very much for that as well.
Oh, so we like to call him tonight's winner.
So he's asked the question about AFDDs. So obviously they don't work very well, or they say on ring final.
Oh, I can answer that.
Ring final circuits. That was the second bit.
Oh, maybe not then.
And is it time to move away from the ring final circuit?
Oh, I can answer that as well.
Yes. Right. There we go. Mark.
Right, so AFDDs, so ring circuits. AFDDs look for the arc, and the arc appears where there is a potential difference. Potential difference could occur between line and neutral or line and the protected conductor. On a ring circuit, ring final circuit, where there's a break in the ring, I'll do it off the camera, there's a break in the ring. Which way am I going? That way? No, that way, that way.
That one. There we are. We're over there.
There we are. There's a break in the ring. Remember, it's connected to the line conductor back at the breaker. So there's no potential difference between there and there, because it's the same conductor, it's just been broken open. So you won't get an arc. Really, you might get, as you come near, you might connect it, pull it apart. Might be a little bit, but you won't get an arc on an open leg, on an open ring. But you will get the arc between line and neutral, or line and earth.
It doesn't pick up a serial one, but it will pick up a parallel one.
Indeed, yes, that's right.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Okay, so the ring circuit. So the ring circuit came about, it was the post-war building studies, and it was post-war building study number 11, 1944.
That's the one I thought it was as well.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely brilliant. Honestly, if you can get hold of it on eBay, post-war building studies number 11 is absolutely brilliant, because it was a committee that met during the Second World War, and they were looking at what the UK would be like once war had finished. And they knew there'd be a shortage of materials, shortage of copper. So the concept of the ring circuit was, rather than have one circuit for two sockets or one circuit for one socket, you had a ring circuit right around the house. You have multiple sockets, so you were cutting down the size of the fuse box. You need one fuse for one circuit that went around the property, and you'd plug your electric heater in the kitchen when you're having your dinner, right where the old Joanna was in the front room. And then in the bedroom at night, so you'd move the electric heater around, and that's what the ring circuit was all about. And from there, that's when the 13 amp, the BS1363, plug top fuse, fused
World's
plug.
finest plug.
World's finest. It's the most reliable. Granted, it hurts when you stand on it in the middle of the night, but it's the most robust with the shuttered socket. Absolutely brilliant. Anyway, that's where it comes from. 1944. And the reason the fuse is in there is because you're fusing down from 30 amps, 32 amps on the ring final circuit to what's going on at appliance level. Are we likely to move away from that? I wouldn't have thought so, because we have a system built on that. What's the point of changing away from a working system? If we move to something else, then there's going to be another concept, another design, another heap of money spent on a way of developing another system. So why do that when we've got a perfectly brilliant system working already?
Wow, that was honest. I really like that. I wasn't expecting you to aim with that one, Mark. We didn't practice that one even, so...
Do I win £5?
No, you can have half the super chat once YouTube have taken most of their money out of it. So, okay, so that's probably going to stay. And that sort of brings me back to a question I got given to on social media. When we start doing our end-to-end testing on 2.5mm squared twin and CPC cables, we're quite comfortable with making a calculation and then being within the throes of 0.05 when we're measuring those end-to-end values, and maybe we want to use some other things. But you sort of suggested to me that maybe some of these ring final circuits now being wired in 4mm twin and CPC. And we do the usual, don't we, as electricians? We take prior knowledge, like we do with the RCD testing, excuse me, when we moved to A from AC, and that didn't work, okay? So our knowledge didn't go with where A was. You said something similar is happening now when people are wiring ring final circuits maybe in 4mm, okay? Because that protective conductor is only at 1.5, that we're getting lost with this 0.05.
Absolutely. So once you get circuit length certainly above 30 metres,
okay,
you can start to notice quite a big difference between the smallest reading on the step 3 of the test when we're doing the figure of 8 with the CPC and line conductor.
Good.
You'll get the smallest reading close to the consumer unit.
Right.
And as you get round sort of where you would be nearly halfway around the ring, that's the biggest reading, and we're getting more than that that sort of 0.05 ohms difference.
Okay, even though that was always suggested at the consumer unit when we're doing our end-to-ends, wasn't it, that we'd expect to be between those. So I'd love some help on that. Wouldn't it be nice if they created a table? Is there anything out there that can help me?
There is.
No, I don't believe it, Graham. You're going to show me. Let me get my camera while you find the appropriate page. So, yeah, so some help on this.
On the spot now.
Yes, and who would have known?
The latest guidance note 3.
Which Rick hasn't read yet.
Edition.
He's let me down.
You seem to have leapt ahead the other Gary, a few chapters. You were in the back, now you're moving forward on it.
We've got our ring final circuit testing.
Yep.
And there is, somewhere around here, a table. Oh, here we go. A table that helps me. And as we can see from this table, of course, the 1.5 mil conductor, there's not a lot of difference, even on 60 mil, between the smallest reading and the biggest reading. This is the in theory reading, but on the same circuit length.
So that's 106 metres, is it? Am I right in saying? Yep, 106 metres.
On the same circuit length with 4 stroke 1.5.
Yep.
We've got 0.35 as the smallest reading, 0.44 as the biggest reading.
That's a huge difference, isn't it?
Yeah. So this table can help you with what you should expect. The smallest reading will occur nearer the consumer unit where you make the cross. The bigger reading will occur halfway around the ring.
Right, okay. And that's a big change, isn't it? A big change in thought, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, and when you brought it to me, I even said, again, I love your comments on this one, how many people are actually wiring ring final circuits in former, but you said it's probably more common than I'm seeing or hearing.
It's to become more common because of thermal insulation,
Yeah.
even in interior stud walls now. They're starting to be thermal insulation is starting to be put in there.
Yeah.
And so some designers are saying, well, 2.5 isn't big enough really for that. When I do my calculations, it's showing me 4 mils needed.
Okay, and then of course everyone's going to hopefully type into the comments, well, let's just abandon the ring and go for an A2 radial arrangement in a domestic dwelling and drop down the floor area and the rest of it, but that might not be what's required.
Well, I mean, that is an option.
It is,
The
yeah.
designer's got that option. And, I do hear and listen to people that I speak to, and their opinions are that they hate ring final circuits because of all the problems they find with them out in the field.
I hear the open neutral is quite a common one, isn't it? Yeah.
Can be.
Yeah, it can be, can it? But,
Is that a point of discussion when you have a Senilec meeting and the old ring final circuit comes up? There's sort of people, Europeans just sort of laughing in the chair and sort of, well, these crazy British.
Well, it probably never comes up in those meetings because we've got our own national requirements for those that are over and above. And as Mark said, it's I suppose a peculiarly UK-centric thing, isn't it? This ring final circuit. There are also discussions that I hear where people are saying, well, for energy efficiency, surely isn't energy wasted in all the fuses in plugs? There is resistive heating. I mean, what does that add up to in terms of energy loss?
wow. Okay, you'd have to multiply it by a lot, wouldn't you? But I suppose there is a lot, isn't there? But, yeah.
Having said that, though, if we take 2 protective devices, that's still twice as much as energy that's wasted as 1 protective, potentially.
Yeah.
And all these overcurrent protective
2 AFDDs as well. Ooh, you don't want to be...
We've done that. How much energy does an AFDD take?
What about the cost of the
Oh,
AFDD?
cost, oh, yeah, wow.
So there are lots of discussion items, and last time it was discussed, I think a lot of these things all came up, and the consensus was that the ring final circuit stayed.
But it wouldn't go away, would it? Because there's literally 29 million
not gonna go away
residential
overnight.
properties there. It's going to live on forever.
So even if we came up with a new plug that didn't have a fuse, that you didn't hurt your foot in the middle of the night and so on, we'd still need to support the existing installations and so on. So as Mark said, there are too many things that would be broke if we tried to change things.
Yeah.
And like I said, there's nothing stopping you not putting them in, is there? If it's your preference.
Yeah.
You can still fit 5 amp circuits, Gary, and 15. I think you can still fit a 15 amp plug.
Okay, that's good.
ES546.
So again, just not from the regs point of view, I hear a lot of people say
Yeah, good.
with our 13 amp plug that the way it was designed Obviously, with the way the cables are, we know you should use the template that comes with it. You made a video that went quite well on TikTok and in Reels, didn't you, about the little bit of cardboard that comes with it. The amount of people that are saying it, and I'm hoping this is a wives' tale of some sort, is that in the event of the plug having some sort of horrific event happen to it, that the CPC or earth or what you, I have to call it an earth in the plug, don't I always have to say it in the lesson.
Protective conductor.
No, okay, we'll go protective. No, I like that because then it's just the green and yellow family. We like it. The protective conductor there is the last one to leave. I think if it's had some horrific event happen to it, where maybe it's on its way out at such a thing, I don't think we're relying on it being the last person to leave the plug. Is that just a wives' tale, or do we think that was by design? This is not a regs thing. This is a conversation thing.
That certainly was the way I was always taught to wire a rewirable plug, was to make sure you had extra length on that CPC.
Okay. In case what? It had an horrific event.
Well, the cord grip becoming loose,
Okay.
or the cable breaking, and the cord grip no longer effective.
So the cables breaking could. So could I have to apply the same knowledge to, say, a light switch? So I put a light switch on a wall. Maybe it's an exposed conductive part. So my circuit protective conductor has made its way onto the frame of it, and I've made sure that it's longer than the others in case it has an horrific event where the screws seem to come out and it pulls itself forward, and it is the last conductor to be disconnected off the back of that. It just seems. Yes.
Well, with a portable appliance, of course, the cable's moving all the time.
And the reverse being, in that situation, you've got the live cable still in the wall, is what I want people to say, because obviously the plug's trying to disconnect itself. I just don't get it. I don't think it will. I think by design, nobody thought that was going to be the last one leaving. I think it's one of those things that's been handed down after everybody to look at it.
It's certainly what I was taught many, many moons ago.
Because I think if you do it to the same length of the card, as you put it out, they all come out virtually at the same time. There's no guarantee one will leave last.
It's a bit longer.
It's on the money, isn't it, for being out last.
I mean, today, of course, it may be a moulded plug, and all those terminals might just very well be in a line inside.
Yeah.
So
So which one comes out last then?
We don't know.
We'll have a competition.
Anybody knows.
It's just one of those house tales.
So here's one, surge protection.
Yep.
And domestic smoke alarms.
Drum roll.
So this is the one. Yeah. So right, in early presentations, it was stated by the IET. Oh, there you go. That's you, Mark. We'll just point at you for that one.
It was
that domestic smoke alarms were not to be considered a safety device. Unfortunately, they do clearly meet the definition. And at the last review, the NIC was suggesting that an ordinary domestic smoke alarm system would require full protection against overvoltage with Type 3 surge protection devices at every unit. No opportunity for opt-out.
Right, okay. So where does this all come from? So chapter 56 of BS 7671 is safety services. And in the past, that was known as supplies for safety services. So we're not bothered about what's on the end of the circuit, it's what the circuit is doing. So when you look in 56, chapter safety services, it talks about 4 methods of providing a safety service, a supply for a safety service. So there's stationary battery, there's primary cells, correct me if I'm going wrong, primary cells, rechargeable or a secondary, generator, or a separate feeder from utility, which is not feeding anything else. So when you think about it, your grade D smoke or heat detector in your dwelling, what is the supply for the safety service? It's not your regularly used lighting circuit, because that's not a primary battery cell, it's not a secondary, it's not from a generator, it's not an alternative supply, it's just something that's there, it's part of the utility, and it's used regularly. And it's off a regularly used lighting circuit, so that if you lose it because of the circuit breaker or the RCD going, you know there's a problem there immediately. So that's my first point, the supply for the safety service for a grade D will be the 9-volt battery inside it, because that's the alternative supply. Now then, getting to the point of discussion about the type of SPD, yes, in 7671, you look at section 534, it's the only place it talks about the type 3 SPD. So you'd have a type 1, 2 at the origin, you'd have a 2 at a subboard, I'm looking at the subboard there behind us, and then outside of BS 7671, you'd have a type 3 device protecting a piece of equipment. Now then, if you look at impulse withstand in 443, and I'm jumping around a lot here,
I like the way he knows all the pages.
Yeah, well, I don't know the page. You can see I'm rifling through here.
Yeah, I've got a copy of it here.
Yeah, don't
It's
worry
a lot
about
of
it.
pictures, though, doesn't it? It's not,
There we are.
no
I'll just hold
colour
that to you.
stuff, is it?
You can get the camera there if you want.
Gary,
Yep, I'm up. Sorry. Yep. Well, I can't do it upside down, though, so here we go. So,
Okay, so here, overvoltage category 1 equipment with reduced for sensitive electronic equipment such as alarm panels. The intention here is that type 1 is the type of device that isn't connected to mains. It is, for instance, the type of smoke detection device that is from a mains panel, from a fire alarm panel, could be addressable system, something like that.
Right.
It's this type here, category 2, that would require SPDs, but there's a lot more to it, of course, but that's essentially where it comes from. That my comment was that a supply for a safety service is not your regularly used lighting circuit.
yeah.
okay.
That's
the
where I was
battery
coming
backs,
from.
the devices
and the
themselves
battery
are
would
battery
be, that's the alternative source. Now, you also look at Chapter 56 in here, and if you've got a supply for a safety service, it's got to be under the supervision of a skilled instructed person. Now, my mum, is she a skilled instructed person? She's got a smoke detector, which is a...
Ring you, so that means...
Well, there you are, you see, yeah.
Keep going. One on the left. No, further left. So just, I think some bits there, though. Let's say we had our smoke detectors we've got, their mains wired, and there is a surge event into the property. The surge would damage the electronic components potentially within there, making the battery's position redundant anyhow.
You're absolutely right, yes.
Yeah, so I think that's where people have sort of, you've answered correctly your part of it. And the fact it's backed up and used the obviously your examples you used there, but I think that's what people have said then. But isn't BS 7671 a minimum requirement, as we've said off camera?
Yeah.
So if you deemed it as the electrician that you require surge protection on those devices, that's the decision you make as the installer, isn't it?
That's right,
Yeah,
yes.
so
With
you
the discussion with the client, because remember,
Yes.
it does say in 443
Yeah.
in a domestic situation that if you, with an agreement with the owner, you could omit them. Yeah.
And we know nowadays that's very highly unlikely, and I've done that this week in the colleges.
But remember, a fully coordinated system is having SPDs at the origin, at subboards, and then also at sensitive electronic equipment, lighting control panels, for instance. If you've got those in your property, it makes sense to have them there.
Yeah, get to that. Isn't it? Yeah, Sonos or whatever you've got a rack or something like that. Yeah, you want something in there, don't you?
Rayco.
Rayco.
I wish I'd fitted surge protection.
Did you?
A long
You've
time
got some
ago.
stories about that, haven't you? You've
I
lost
did
a few.
lose. I did lose a few elements of the Rayco system following a lightning strike. Yeah,
because you're
in
not
the area, not at the house.
because you're not far from.
I'm not far from the
pylons
local distribution transport. I should have done that risk assessment before you took it out.
Yeah,
you see.
yeah, absolutely.
I would have definitely put it in then. But
So it goes back to, people are trying to win an argument, but actually they probably need to apply their own knowledge and say to themselves, well, yeah, I don't want the smoke detectors to go. The telly goes all well and good, but we don't want that to go either. But yeah.
It would be a real problem. It would be a real shame if, for instance, if I arrived at your house to put in some grade D smoke detection, because it wasn't there previously, I put it in, and I went to you and I said, well, actually, I've got to put in some SPDs. Yeah. That's going to double the price, triple the price. And the person says, well, I can't afford that.
Yeah, and
it's far better having the grade D system than it is having grade D with, or not installing because you can't afford the SPDs.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, when you did that presentation, which I watched as well, if you'd have said that on the back of it, I went, oh yeah. Wouldn't it? It's that moment in time, and it's easy. Everyone's looking for the open gate, and so they can go charging in and jump on it. But that's cleared up now and explained. So thank you for that. It's a really good question, though, for somebody to circle back into that one.
it is, yeah.
Yeah. And he gave a super chat, so remember to nudge that one over.
I mean, I'd say as a safety device, your telephone in the house that's probably got a power supply into it's probably more important, isn't it? Because you probably need that to ring the emergency services when there is a problem.
So the interesting thing about that is, of course, in a very short space of time, I think by 2025, phone lines as they used to be are being switched off, and where it will be internet only.
Right. Oh, I didn't know that one.
Gordon from that saying has obviously got one with a cord on it, and he had
No,
just in case there's a surge, I want to make sure
So
my phone's in good.
fully voice over IP. I mean, it's already, if you have a traditional phone, it's already being converted to voice over IP at the exchange.
Yeah.
But It will be going fully voice over IP, and you'll have to provide some local power and local backup power if you want that for your phone.
Yeah.
Having said that, I think there's other countries that have already gone that whole hog. The thing is that there are very, very few people that don't have a mobile phone.
Yeah.
So, it's just an interesting point of something that is going to happen.
Is that 2025?
I believe it is, yeah.
That's not far off. No,
Old still won't have settled their case with you by then, though, will they?
No. That'll still be rumbling on, and I
How
don't
long's
have
that been
mobile
now?
phone reception.
How long's that been?
A year. It's coming up to a year, actually.
I thought it was longer than that. It's only a year.
It's only a year.
Pain. Yeah, so that's smart.
He
meter.
seems to be the most unluckiest man I've ever met with all the problems.
Oh, technology. Early adopt technology, but you don't have to pay for it, I tell you. So, literally.
So for some reason, Gordon decided to take his economy 7 metre out and just have a standard one put in, and he's got an EV. I don't know why you'd do that.
Yeah. Well, it was supposed to be a smart meter, but it's
But you haven't got a smart meter. You've got a standard meter.
But it looks like a smart meter.
But it's a standard meter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had a E7, you took it out?
That's when you said to me, they don't come and read the meter, they come and change the bearings, don't they?
Yeah, that's it. That's it. It's when it clicks. It's the after that big pile of 50p's, it gets enormous now. Yeah, remember. Yeah.
I think it's time to go over and do the register. If you've waited this long for your shout out, you absolutely deserve it. Okay, so we'll go over, we'll see Rick and Joe for the register.
Hello, good evening everyone. Hope you're all well. It's that time again. First I'll have an update on the post though. It has all gone out, so I think I'm up to date with it, but let me know if not and I'll try to get it out before we have a break for Christmas. So yeah, we'll go straight to it. So we've got returning members. So we have Pegasus Electrical and Control, Gadget Man, Rose Ironworks, Troy Boy, Mark the Sparky Allison, X-Forces Electrician, Aaron, Sergio Fernandez, Stephen Skillen, James Kane, Sean Dempsey, Carl Robson, Dion Potgeiter, this next one's quite hard, Travolta's Biplane, EV Blocks, 7up Sam, Jurassic Sparks, Artisan Electrics, Ryan Fuller, Paul Tipton, R. Davis Electrical, Liberato Del Greco, Jonathan Rose, Sockets, PDKH, Short Circuit, Princess Spark, Terry Moore, Richard Cockerline, Ren Skylark, Matt Marine, Eng, Chris Oswin the Sparky, Dave Noble, Rob Holmes, Kevin Osborne, Billy Torrey, Marcus Barrett, and finally Lee Winspear. Rick for the new members.
So we've got one or two new ones here. So we've got William Lang, Ashley Cow, Andy from Isolate for Life, Gary Murphy, Angelino, Neil Bridgman, Ross, Paul Healy, Sparks Overhead, Andy Baker, Gary Good, Aaron M and Ben. And that is the register.
That's a good turnout.
That is a very good time. A few disappointing moments. It's the first time Mr. Bridgman's joined us. I
think he's.
Hello, Neil.
Some people change their names.
Yeah, absolutely. So, thank you very much for joining us, Neil. We had a great time down at Solar Storage, was it? Solar saw him.
Speaking of Neil, he's fired a question
Or was
as
he?
well.
A question from Neil.
So if anyone doesn't know Neil, he's an expert in the low voltage side of the rail industry. And he suggests, should that be its own special location as defined in the regs?
That's a very interesting question. I think in terms of the special requirements for the railway, they're covered in the railway industry's own standards. There's also limitations on the scope of BS 7671 regards some parts of the low voltage installation. So, for example, for traction power and signalling systems and so on. So there you do need to refer to other standards that exist. I think really it's probably one for industry specifications and guidance. And But yes, there are special requirements for the railway, and I'd say there are existing standards. BS 7671 could be supplemented by other standards for that, in the same way the EMC standards are supplemented as well.
Sounds like another guidance note to me, Graham. There's an opportunity there.
The book in it, mate.
Better get the fingers going on the
I'd be
keyboard.
phoning Neil afterwards. He could do a deal there.
He'd love to be involved. Big rugby man as well. So your son is as well, isn't he?
Oh yes.
He's got up to what level now? Is he semi-pro?
Yeah, he's approaching that. Yeah, yeah.
Brilliant. And how old is he?
20.
And what position does he play?
He's he's a prop.
So he's still not quite there, is he? You know,
No,
physically
he's still
then?
working in the gym.
Yeah. Oh wow. Okay. So we might see him one day. You know, being in the professional ranks with a bit of luck.
You know, I'd be proud if he did that, but even where he is at the minute, he's doing a great job.
Fantastic. I don't know where he got his physique from rugby, but we'll ask his mother.
Yeah. Here's another one. Is it a legal requirement to comply with BS 7671? I suspect this is an end user. I had some work done, and only after I found out that it was not done in accordance with the regulations.
That's an interesting question because one of the things that we learn is that BS 7671 is non-statutory. I suppose, what does that mean? Well, it means that BS 7671, whilst it's called, or used to be called, the wiring regulations, is not legislation in its own right. However, is it a legal requirement? Well, I don't think the building regulations actually requires BS 7671 to be used, but the ESQCR in regulations 21 and 22, where we've got switched alternative sources of supply or sources of supply operating in parallel like solar PV, requires BS 7671 to be used. In those regulations, it's termed the British Standard Requirements, and when you look in the definitions, the interpretation, citation, interpretation, and commencement clauses in the regulations, it defines British Standard Requirements as BS 7671.
Yeah, so we'll take that as a probably.
Certainly
Through the back door.
Through the back, yeah.
Certainly sometimes.
Yeah. But I mean, I always look at the worst case in these things, and I always look at when we have Dr. Robert Weller in, and he's been combing through the burning embers of a building, and say you've had a new installation done, and it gets through to some sort of legal case. Would they sort of look at, you've had this new building done and it's burned down, and you didn't follow BS 7671, would that be used against you?
Well, it can. BS 7671 itself tells us it can be used as evidence in court. Yes.
Yeah.
It's a measure of good practice.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but it's tricky, isn't it? If you've got a contract in and they just haven't. Yeah, that's. I guess.
I'm just looking at the question. If the contractor was registered on a scheme, then there would be the complaints procedure to the scheme against the contractor, and the scheme provider should
rectify.
Should act. Yes, should act to sort it out.
And when you talk about schemes, then I love it, Mark. A little segue into here. I start thinking about that private rented sector. I start thinking about maybe increasing the number of inspections done during the life of the property every 5 years and all the rest of it. And there's been some hot debates, I think you've been in the middle of them, about maybe the quality of those inspections. Maybe they were done with the window down and at 40 mile an hour and things like that. And you've got some interesting points about maybe the type of person that should be involved in carrying out those inspections, or the level of competence of the person carrying out those inspections. Do you want to add a little bit more detail to it?
Yes, so in 2020 we saw the electrical safety regulations, and it was about mandatory inspections in the private rented sector. So this meant that a landlord has to get the property that they're renting. This is in England, exactly. I'm not sure if it's Wales actually, but there you are. Not in Scotland. Scotland's slightly different.
They're not very big in Wales.
Well, yeah, okay. But the landlord has to get an EICR carried out every 5 years. Now, if you go on the gov.uk website, and you'll find the guidance for landlords, and in there it advises landlords. You can choose the person to carry out the EICR by one. You can go and select them from one of the competent person scheme registers. Okay. The second point is you could choose someone who deems themselves competent.
Okay, I love that. Oh, let's go back there, because hopefully you've got that on camera. Deems themselves competent. So, deems themselves competent.
Yes, someone who isn't registered on one of the schemes but declares that they've got public liability insurance, that they've got the competency to carry out this particular work. Now that, what certainly the IET has seen, and my colleague at the IET, Connor, has written some articles on this and investigated, spoken to contractors about it, that there have been a number of, let's call them fly-by, drive-by inspections where people haven't even been into the properties and have issued EICRs on installations that they've barely looked at. And landlords, it's been the race to the bottom, hasn't it? the rest of the bottom that people are paying 50 quid for an EICR. And that piece of paper then is issued to the landlord. Landlord might give a copy to the tenant. The tenant thinks they've got a safe installation when it hasn't really been inspected. Granted, this isn't across the board, but there are examples of that happening. Now then, what we talked about earlier was that there is a drive for mandatory inspections in the social rented sector. So rolling out this scheme, if you like, into the social rented sector. And what the IET has said and put a comment in to say, crikey, let's sort out the existing legislation because it's full of holes you can drive for coaching horses through it. Let's get that sorted out before you even think about bringing in more legislation.
And when we think about the competency of the person carrying that out then, so let's say I'd done a course that got me to the level of a dwelling installer. So I'd be installing my own wiring systems in a domestic dwelling and being able to certificate them through the appropriate third party. Would that person therefore have enough knowledge and experience to then carry out installation condition reports when they're actually probably only been trained to install effectively new circuits or alternate existing circuits and test them? Because there is quite a lot more information required to know what's wrong with an installation compared to with installing one.
Yeah. This is one of the problems, isn't it? That, as I mentioned earlier, if you go to the gov.uk website, look at guidance for landlords, it says you can choose a person who is on one of the registered with one of the competent person schemes. Now, the competent person schemes came along in response to Part P, and it was about registering those contractors who would work on, who would design and install electrical installations and certify at the end. And that was under Part P. Now, that was about an installation standard. It wasn't about inspecting existing installations, because you could parachute someone into an old house from the 30s. There could be double pole fusing, there could be VIRs in there, and this person might not know what they're looking at. But also think about what's happening under Part P with the competent person schemes. You've got the qualified supervisor model, where a small firm might have one person who is the qualified supervisor, has the electrical qualifications and the experience, but the people working for them, the people doing the work on the tools, etc., might not be up to this person's level. Might be electrical improvers, for example, but they're under supervision. So the guy will say to them, put this cable in from here to there, put this socket on the end, do it, and I'll come and see you tomorrow, make sure you've done it all right.
And take ownership.
And take ownership, and they're being supervised to do the work, which is perfectly fine and brilliant. But the problem happens if this company, this mythical company, if they take on EICR work, they could be sending someone into a property to assess that particular property and carry out an EICR, but not know what they're looking at because they haven't been through a proper structured electrical training program, for example.
Right, yeah.
And think about, we've got PV on roofs, we've got battery storage coming in. The person going into these particular properties, crikey, has got to have a real broad schooling, haven't they, to be able to deal with everything that they're seeing and dealing with, because if they're going to test a circuit, they'll need to make sure the PV is switched off or isolate particular parts of the installation. And it becomes a bigger ask. Now, of course, the law, the Electricity Work Regulations 1989, requires that whoever does the work is competent to do so. But as we've all talked about, there isn't sufficient people in this country to do the work that's needed as it is. And the fear is that non-qualified persons are being parachuted in to carry out these inspections.
And there's no way of then, if you're going to validate somebody doing an EICR who hasn't got the level of competency, you'd have to do it yourself anyhow. You couldn't validate it by just looking at their results, etc., or maybe a couple of photographs. You'd have to probably be there. So effectively, the person who was in the competent person scheme with the qualification, obviously he'd have to, or she'd have to do that inspection. So yeah, there's a little bit of a loophole there, isn't it?
That's right. You couldn't have that one qualified supervisor. They couldn't be on every job at the same time. It is a bigger problem, and this is the IT wants this looked at, wants this addressed before they even, again, as I said, before they even think about rolling out further legislation of the same ilk.
And I think it's refreshing to use that race to the bottom phrase as well. We hear it a lot on social media and the rest of it, and in the position you are in, that you're comfortable using that, because that's a phrase a lot of us are using in the electrical industry, that we're seeing our wonderful trade maybe just taken down a notch every now and again. And every time we drop another notch, it's really difficult to get it back up again. And this is a classic example of somebody trying to make a quick buck when the intent of it was brilliant. These properties were being left and they weren't very safe in some instances and potentially dangerous to the people in there. We've put a mechanism in place to improve that, and then we've not even...
It's fallen well short, and it's allowing anybody in to do that, and again, it's the race to the bottom. Now, I believe our trade is the best trade to be in, because it's not just the construction side of things, the different tools and different equipment that we see, but it's skills like fault finding. You know, you set somebody up with a two-way lighting circuit that's gone wrong, you give it to a plumber, they wouldn't have a clue. But because an electrician, we've been through the process of step by step, try this, do that, look at this, there's the problem. And it's that fault-finding expertise that we've developed, been taught and then developed, which it's just brilliant. Our trade is brilliant. But because the legislation like this has allowed the trade to be run down.
And obviously you've stepped in, you've asked them to slam on the brakes and that. So ultimately, solution, if you could, magic ball time, what would solve that problem moving forward?
So the IT is firmly behind individual competency. So it's about the person going to do the job has the skills to do the job, not to be supervised by somebody else. Yeah. Because the IT is about membership, it's about bettering oneself. Individual competency. As Graham mentioned earlier, there's Eng Tech, there's different levels of membership to be professionally registered. Yeah. And we believe that's the way forward, certainly.
Good. Yeah, no, that's a fantastically refreshing statement for us to hear and everyone to hear on the show. That's good. No,
I would recommend people do join the IT.
Yeah. You're a member?
Yeah, I've been for decades now.
Well, you've got decades to go back on, haven't you?
No, but it just, even if you're just interested in technology in general, isn't it? You get the magazine comes every month.
Look at you! The magazine comes every month. Every month.
No, if we wind the clock back, you used to opt into different ones.
That's right. Yeah.
More magazines.
No, there was loads. They used to it was like milk bottle tops to a blue Peter people come through the door. But you used to opt into power systems, the management one. I mean now because most stuff's online now.
Oh, is it?
Really? But there's some great resources.
Oh, no,
you jest.
No, no.
There is some, and you can. As I think we've seen tonight through the two fantastic guests we've got, you start out as an electrician, you can build that career up to wherever you want to go.
Absolutely.
But you sort of need to identify these new exciting areas that are coming along. Like if I was starting out now, you'd be all over the whole battery, PV, solar, storage thing, because that fantastic market opportunity, huge customer demand, solves the world's problems that we like to do, part of it.
Come on, keep going.
And there's probably quite a lot of money to
There you go. So we started on figure 4 instead of it's quite a lot of money in there. It's good. That's what we want. No.
But there's also electricians that work in lots of different sectors, isn't it? It's not we think we work in houses, but there's jobs in industry, and as industries grow, I think you sort of get a glimpse of that, because the IT is not just the wiring regulations, is it? There's a you sort of if you ever get the chance, visit the Savoy Place. There's always some interesting conference. What's going on in there? Cyber security.
You wouldn't get into that one, hopefully, would you?
You wouldn't get in, but you just look and you just realise actually from how big this industry is and the opportunities out there.
Yeah, that's good. And again, look at it on LinkedIn. We see a lot, don't we, when people have got Eng Tech or they've got fellowships and all the rest of it, they bang it on there. They're so proud of themselves, and that's great. So we want in our industry people, waving the flag about how hard they've worked and the extra mile they've gone. That maybe links in a little bit into, as we change our regulations, and we go to Amendment 3 that you confirmed earlier on, which was nice of you, what you're saying, there's not Amendment 3, there's not, it's going straight to the 19th edition now. So obviously there is a cry, isn't there, at those moments to when we bring out another version, and I love the way we did it this time, when Amendment 2 came out, that we could do it in other ways, that we could actually prove the fact that we've got ourselves up to speed, maybe a big push for CPD across the, you're doing some stuff on the road as well, a lot we are trying to do to give people an opportunity to add additionalities to them. Could you see we get to a point where we almost trust the electrician, that we don't necessarily say, I know it's competent person schemes and all the rest of it, that there is a 100% need to do a regulation course if you've done a series of other stuff that equally can show that you've increased your knowledge from where it was in the first place, and you've taken on board the changes and refreshed your knowledge. Can you see that being?
I'll let Graham answer this proper, but my take on this is that not everybody has had the opportunity to do a fully structured indentured apprenticeship and everything else to get them to the point of competency. It might be somebody who starts off and puts themselves through something, a little something else, to get to that point of competency. So there isn't one route, is there? And as you said a moment ago, there's such a lot going on. It's different avenues to go down. You can go anywhere with it. So I'll let Graham pick up from there.
I can see, again, it's one of these things I don't think, there's no straight answer for. To say, is somebody competent, we'd like a gate, these gates to go through, but as you just demonstrated, that isn't the real world, is it? It's not how things are. I suppose there's also the argument that if the 2382, is it 18 now? Or 20, or has it just been updated to 22?
I'll look at my shoes again rather than answer you.
But and the similar qualifications provided by other qualification providers.
Yep.
We're told really they're, you demonstrate you can use the book qualification.
Yep.
Well, if I demonstrated I could use the book in 2018, why do I need to demonstrate I can look things up in a book now? And what's more important is picking up the knowledge, isn't it?
Yes. That's and I hear it a lot. Again, you've got to update your regulations. People walk into a room and the first thing they say is, I just need the piece of paper. That's what you're hearing in the chats before people go in the room. What you do? Oh, I'm here for 2 days, 3 days, 1 day, whatever it is. I just need the piece of paper. Are they going to do any practice papers? I just want to do a load of practice papers. I just want to pass the exam. Well, that's pointless. There's no value been added there other than a piece of paper, and they believe they've ticked a box. And then even some of the fundamental changes that come in, the easiest stuff that that's all over social media, they've missed everything because they're craving a piece of paper, not craving knowledge. And craving knowledge would be the first thing for me, and not necessarily wanting just to get another certificate that I can just put out in front of someone. We've seen it as well with perhaps CPD. I know it's started to come in more and more. You're involved in the stuff that City are doing, City Electrical Factors are doing, and all the rest of it, which is great. And we've got our CPDs, but again, it's that. It adds knowledge. You've got an opportunity to add knowledge, maybe in a way that you like. Maybe you like to listen to people. Maybe you can ask questions as you can at conferences. We've got ours where you can sit in the comfort of your home. You watch a video, answer some questions. There's something there. But this, I just need something, is no good to me. I just need to pass the next edition of the regulations.
I suppose a good example is Section 722, electric vehicles, comes along and it's about 10 years old now, isn't it? Now and at the time, it probably wasn't as many pages as it is now. It's still only about 10 pages in the weighing regulations, isn't it? If that 10 pages is one thing, the implications of all that go into a 200-page guidance book, the Code of Practice for Electric Vehicle Charging Equipment Installations. And that's the issue, isn't it? It's understanding all those other knock-on implications of just those few words on those few pages.
And again, you look through your exam, might have 2 questions in that section. That's all you're worried about, the 2 questions in that section, and they've got might get one in Marines. Oh, I don't know that section, I always whip past that one. It's better to acquire knowledge than certificates, I think. And it's a hard balancing act, isn't it? when you come to that one. But
you look at what electric vehicles brought in, it was the charger itself, and then there's the data infrastructure that goes with it, that brought a whole load of electricians need to get their head around a little bit of data networking.
Yep.
And that's which has its own regulations beyond just BS 7671. It's
Absolutely.
not that heavy in there, but some of these bigger installs people are doing where there's multiple charge points and all the smart stuff connecting to the cloud, and it's fueled our channel for a while. Those few slithers of pages in there, we get great views out of. So put more in like that. That's what we want. That's good. Can't wait for Section 8 to be thrashed out.
Oh, we weren't meant to say that. They told us we can't say everything. Amendment 3's coming.
I think we're best cut to the second half of our challenge one.
What does that mean we've got to do if we're watching?
We want another time in, another set of time in. So this is for Ian.
Describe the person going to be
So
counting.
again, Ian's the MD, but he worked his way up from the shop floor all the way to the
shop floor, I think, nearly, didn't he?
he
the way
did.
he went through it.
All the way from shop floor to the managing director of CNORM. So he might have been on the tools a while ago.
Well, no, I think he actually took electrical qualifications during his progression through. So I think he went back to night school and has studied his level 2 and his level 3. So I don't know how much maybe real
Panel building.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that.
Wiring of the gods, Gary.
Wiring for gods, is it?
Oh,
Yeah.
Everyone
Okay.
likes a bit of panel building.
But again, so probably contracting-wise, I doubt he's seen too much contracting, has he? He just stayed at Sea Normal, worked his way up. And I think that's a fantastic story as well, to be able to, you know, even nowadays hear that somebody came in and got to managing director. And Luke, I think, has seen that as a bit of a carrot, hasn't he? Because he's certainly got ambitions to move himself through it. So does that mean Luke went a little bit slower just to see if he gets job opportunities and perhaps it's a quicker time?
I think our challenge model looks a bit like a panel, really, size-wise. If you can do panels, you can do the challenge role.
Well, okay. So
We've got some times coming in. Let's see some time. Oh, they're coming in. So
pouring in.
let's.
Get the times in before it ends.
Ooh, there you go, Rick. Teasing us there. So let's got to it. Right, step aside. Luke, the boss, Ian, has turned up. And Ian's background is a bit of panel wiring.
Ooh, well, I don't know. This is similar, isn't it? There's a bit of containment in there, a little bit of confined spaces with your hands trying to get in to make some terminals, but not a ferrule crimping tool in sight, even though I'm sure you'd like to introduce one, but you can't have it on glass.
He's in there, and he hasn't fallen foul of the old new reels there, and he's gone for the tape as well.
Okay, so if I was in the position of being Luke, would you want to beat the MD? Is it a good move for your career?
Tricky, but he hasn't gone for the straight on the cables there, but that's actually paid off. Oh, hold on. I saw a tanglement on the reel. You might get away with it.
So he's into the consumer unit, so this is the bit, yeah, that's it. Now you're on the easy street. Those side cuts should come in handy. Just flick and pop. There's one.
Okay, yeah.
There's two. It's on the little groove within them, so that's helping out. Obviously, I've talked it a bit quicker than he did it in, so a few valuable seconds lost there. In with a posse.
Interesting screwdriver technique there.
Yeah, a little bit different. I've seen a hand and a twizzle.
Twizzle. He's quite a bit taller than Luke there, so he's got
Quite a bit
eagle-eyed,
taller.
eagle-eyed in there.
He's a giant amongst men compared to obviously Luke. Look at that! He's towering above the board. Have we dropped the height of this consumer unit, or is it just an absolute shame how tall Luke is?
This is looking good.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Just that socket outlet to go. Don't worry about the cables there. It's no different to panel wiring. Usually you open up a panel. It's not very neat, is it?
No, the spring out, the coiled spring.
Absolutely. You can't move for cables. Yeah. So what are we going to do with the CPC? Are we going to do a JB? Wrong screwdriver.
Wrong screwdriver. Still got the barcode on it. There we go. Try to sneak that one in. See if anyone
Perhaps
can.
they'll return it when they get back. Yeah, we're coming in the post near you soon.
They didn't return it. You had it off them.
I did, yes. I was going to a college in Nottingham. Yeah. So that's all good. I've already lined up the person to win that one.
Competent.
Oh, look at that. That's good.
This is good.
Yeah, he's in the swing of it now. So just got to make those connections. It's going to be tough, isn't it? So we've got the electrician off the tools after a couple of years taking on the MD. This is going to be a lot closer, I think, than people are going to imagine. We're trying to get the accumulated time, so it's these two times added together. We're flicking around a bit there on the edit. Yes, I like it. Keeps your eyes interested in the process.
Okay, so he's gone for, what's he gone here? Separate CPCs, different terminals each. He's gone for the one on either side. That can cost you a little bit of time, but it is very reliable doing it that way.
Okay, I think they've removed that from BS7671 as a requirement now. So
still lives on.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? So here we go. Screws coming in.
Hold on. Holding the screwdriver in the mouth. We'll have to come up with it. Is that the Ian? Can we call that? Have we had that before?
What you got to remember is that Luke was the only one with any lunch, and at Lineside Studios we don't provide people with food. He was probably that hanging by the time he got there. He thought having a little nibble on his screwdriver would be the way forward. A little bit of nourishment off the handle there. There we go. All done.
So how did you find the challenge?
Challenging. Haven't been off the tools for a little while. Yeah. But enjoyed it though.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it.
And Luke?
I bled a little bit. Soft hands now.
Soft hands. Now I must point out at this stage, you actually bought some new tools just to do it.
We did.
Oh, we did, yes.
Yeah. I mean that's a impressive looking set there. That's
It's a brand we distribute. It's a German company called Hauper.
all right. I didn't know you had tools as well.
Yeah, working with them since about 2014.
We've slipped up there. We could have raided the tool cupboard. There's nothing we like more than new tools. But did they help? That's the question. So if I'm looking across on the board, where would you like to be, Ian? We'll start with you.
Me, as long as I'm somewhere between the top and the bottom, maybe in the middle, I'll be reasonably happy with that.
And you, Luke?
Somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle. You gave us blood on this one, so let's have a look. Right, well, Luke, you did this in 3 minutes, which puts you in electrician territory, even though you're above a lot of other electricians. Actually, 3 minutes, a 53, which puts you right there with Richard Brook, who is, yeah, he's been off the tools a while as well. And Ian, you did this in 4 minutes and 20, which are all commendable scores.
I will take that.
Ooh, interesting, yeah. So didn't look a lot in it, but unfortunately the edit's always good, isn't it? Yeah, so it was one of those as we've gone through. So it means that it's time to announce the timed winners. So that means we have to go over to Joe with the times and prizes.
Yep, prize time. What have we got? We've got EType winner 1. The time was 3:53, and we had someone get it exactly. So the winner is Ross. So if you go to the link in the description, get involved, fill out the form, and we'll get it sent out to you within 2 years. And then the second winner was, the time was 4 minutes 20. I think he was 2 seconds off. So the winner is Richard Cockeright. So you do the same, please, and we'll get them shipped out to you.
There we go.
Wow, so that's link in the description, fill in the details of the Get Involved tab, and within probably 28 days-ish, but we're going to have to take 2 off that before we start weeks-wise, aren't we? So
Christmas
it could be,
in between.
Yeah, it's going to be the end of January before you see those. If you don't see them, just take one for the team for that.
So yeah, apologies that the live comments aren't working. So we normally bring them up on screen.
Ah, right, okay.
So I've had to revert back to the old method, Gary.
Oh, okay, we've printed something on here.
Printed it off on paper. It's getting cold in here, so I've put my Christmas hat on.
They're not your
Sorry
ears?
for Mark's reason.
Oh, right. Oh, wow, I thought they were.
They're stitched on. No, mine are under here
You're
still.
wearing your Carpenters jacket and you've got your hat on. Lovely.
Yes, so a couple of questions we'll find fire in because we've been on an epic 2 hours and yeah, we're conscious our guests have got to travel back.
No, they're cold.
They're cold, yeah.
They're cold. They've got to, I am cold now. And I'm
Jacket
never
all
cold.
right, Rick?
Yeah.
Tickety-boo.
Tickety-boo. There you go. You're welcome. Right, so some questions. With technology, should there be a requirement in the future photographic records to be issued with an EICO?
Well, photographic records, it certainly would help your client if you provided an all singing, all dancing report demonstrating exactly, rather than just writing a regulation number or citing no bonding. What does that mean? Well, actually, a photograph would help. But the regulations, I think Graham said, they are the fundamental. Follow the regs and you're right. After that, you can certainly do more and add. And your product, your service you provide, if you've got a nice report that's readable in layman's terms rather than regs terms, and photographs to demonstrate what you found, I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah, and just remember, this was from Richard Brook Sockets, just remember you can get fake photographs, as I say. I had a delivery the other day by DPD, yeah, there was photographic evidence. It just wasn't our door.
Oh,
that was the one, so there we go. But,
did you get the thing in the end?
Did, yeah, in the end, yeah, tracked it down. But you're right, isn't it? You're offering, it's like everyone, you're offering a service. Yeah, if you want to bamboozle the customers with C1s and C3s, but a picture tells 1,000 words sometimes. Here's a picture of the cracked socket. You should replace it.
Little video never hurts either, does it? With a little bit of running commentary as you go, is even levels it once more.
Yeah, no, that was it. So, let's have a think. Oh, one here. So we've got Y, his technical ones here. Y in table 4D5. Is there no method for sizing cables run under wooden floors, but above plasterboard ceilings with no insulation and above the ceiling, i.e. most UK houses? So reference methods, I think, is the is the one, isn't it?
I'll quickly answer that one then. There are many different methods of installing cables that aren't cited in BS 7671. So they're a snapshot of different methods. But if there's a method there that you want to install, well, really, the way to do it is you would look at something that's quite similar to where you are and take an engineering judgment about how it's going to look ultimately, and err on the side of caution. I mean, there are the ERA, for example. They've done reports on cables, for instance, where on a building site, for example, you're an armoured cable, and in that ditch, that trough that's been built, there's polystyrene cups, there's rubble, there's all manner of rubbish in there. But ERA carried out some research where they had finely sifted sand from the Sahara. It was all beautiful. Everything was absolute. So they got 100 amps more out of a cable. But there you are. There are ways and means. ERA does some fantastic, have some fantastic, I forget the word, products on. You might have to pay for it, of course, but it might be out there in the public domain. But that's the answer, that not every method of installation is cited in BS 7671. It comes to the designer to use their engineering judgment. They might speak to the cable manufacturer. They might speak to a cable designer.
Yeah.
I think that's a classic case of trusted electrician almost again, isn't it? You know, you've trained, you've gathered skills and knowledges, and all of a sudden there isn't quite as many methods as you would like to just be able to say, or pluck one out of the air. But no, we're in a position where we can make that call, aren't we? We're skilled enough to do it.
I think Graham summed it up in the guidance there as well. Obviously, more insulation in buildings, people are having to think of, you can't stick, ring final circuits aren't just 2.5 anymore. It becomes a big problem with lots of insulation.
I mean, Table 4D5 has actually just been updated for Amendment 2. And what will probably sort of, well, people will have known who've looked for it, our flat cable in containment, in plastic conduit and trunking, which is a common installation method, wasn't in there. But it is now.
All right, well, there you go. Did you spot that one, Rick?
Yeah, don't ask me. I've got a Rick now. He does everyone else's job. She's doing my reading for me.
Isn't there a 0.5 cable in there? Flat
Yeah, there is.
There's allegedly a 0.5 in there. Joe docked
Yeah,
at the table.
you'll be-
He was naughty, that man.
Wow, and that was the only reason, Joe, we got in trouble with the IET was because you did the tapes. We'd have done the joke, everyone would have laughed. I bet Mark would have rang us up and said, "Brilliant, guys, the tables, done us."
We're rolling about the floor in Stevenage.
Yeah, up until them pages turned up.
So, yeah, good question. Right. Let's have a look here. Is there a formula in the regs book, in the design book, related to grouped circuits or cables in parallel? The formula in design guide is IZ equals IT times C factors. Not sure on that one.
Exactly. There are, yes. There
Good,
are.
short
Yes.
answer, yes.
It's so I'm not quite understanding exactly where this question is going. I'll be honest, and you know, if you know, maybe I could have a read it later and see if we can point you to a specific place to answer it. But and we can put that online, can't we?
Yes, no, there is, yeah.
Let's do that.
I think there's people trying to angle for a prize here, just putting in.
Right, really complicated sounding things. I was like, wow, if they get an answer out of this, even Mark was like nodding it through. I was like, yeah, I've got no idea what's going on now. So,
Yeah.
that was one of them uncomfortable moments.
Here's one. I guess there's a related answer to this. Do you study Home Office stats submitted via emergency services from incidents relating to electrical deaths and injuries? And if so, how long does it normally take to flag up an immediate concern for them?
Well, it's not my bedtime reading.
Yeah.
We would only get these things through, I think if a government department had a particular concern and provided that. So occasionally, people will ask questions of HSE and vice versa, and we might get to see that kind of thing. But yeah, I think the answer is no. We don't go looking for problems on purpose.
But you said earlier on, if there's a coroner's report and it mentions something electrical, you do take them into account, isn't it?
Absolutely. So there are mechanisms where if our judicial system feels that there is something that needs to be redressed in a standard or some legislation, they can write to the relevant people involved, and that legally has to be acted upon. So,
yeah, and that's where we're backtracked to things like entanglement, isn't it? Where people still struggle to grasp why that is in there.
You look at the photographs of the people that perished, and then you stop struggling, and get on with doing it. So it's heartbreaking. Heartbreaking.
There we go. And just to round off, we'll go to the last question.
Yeah. Go on.
Why can't electric sockets have a flap to be used in the bathroom like the EU?
Okay. They're all shuttered though, aren't they, sockets? Are your sockets shuttered at home?
The fixed socket outlets, definitely.
Okay, but that sounds like there might be a socket outlet in your house that isn't shuttered.
Certainly, I was intrigued with a product that I spotted in Cyprus.
Okay, but it's not an energised product in your house, no?
It oughtn't to be.
Oughtn't to be, okay? What's the old saying, Gordon? Cobbler's
kids.
Have
Yeah,
the worst.
cobbler's kids.
Yeah, okay. So, okay, yeah, all right. So, yeah. Prizes wise, are we going to try and come up with them? A couple of people with the good questions that we had this evening across all the questions we had?
Oh, I think we have. I mean,
Do you know, I think the question about socket outlets in bathrooms, whilst it seems innocuous, I reckon that is a good thing to go with.
Cool.
Because
We'll dig that one out.
it's topical, but it's also taken us on a historical trip as well, isn't it?
it has. Well, like a trip down memory lane.
Is there another one so we get one more out of the full collection?
Who you want? I mean, what do you want to go?
We've had a lot tonight, so bear with us.
Yeah. I mean, I like the one on the surge protection device because I think that's cleared up a lot of.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah,
I think that was aimed to revisit a
as you
problem they
pointed
thought
out,
you had.
it was me that fueled that debate, and I think having debate is an important thing.
Yep. Yep.
So that was a good question. I think that would get my vote as well.
Very good.
Whoever you were,
Yeah,
thank you.
Okay, and so how would that person? How do we know now?
We've got their email address, Gary.
We have.
Yeah, so we all
Brilliant.
drop them an email address afterwards. It's Jonathan Swain. I know you said he was in the register earlier on,
Okay,
so
brilliant.
that was,
So,
that was
really,
good.
Yeah, really good question. Before we finish, we'd like to thank the great people we'd like to thank them at Doncaster Cable, Luden Palazzoli. We'd like to thank the lovely people at the Seco Group.
Yeah.
Okay, sure, you put that one in last time.
Yeah.
Okay, we'd like to thank, I don't know.
My Energy.
I'm just going to say that, My Energy. Have you got them all?
Doncaster, get my Marshall Tufflex, Lasico,
You didn't get
Vargo.
Marshall, you didn't get Marshall Tufflex. Last time we missed out the Seco Group, you only put one in.
To do this.
Okay, yes, but again, you've got to try and remember these people. I've had a blast this evening, absolutely. I felt under pressure, okay, because obviously the site people in. I'd like to think they've demystified the IET, and they are not anything other than normal people that are interested in answering your comments as the best of their abilities. I don't think it's some secret group. I don't think I'm ever going to get into that secret group. It isn't a secret group, but I'm not going to get into. And I think we've had a blast this evening. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's I mean, I've really enjoyed it. I think we've put some we coloured in the lines a little bit on some of the regulations.
And we'd like to have you back, actually. I mean, we don't often sort of say at the end of a show that you're 100%. We'd like to have you back, whether it's the two of you again. But we certainly want the IET to come back and show that actually, they're willing to stand in front of the audience and, have them moments, and even those funny ones we had at the Indian and all the rest of it. It's good. Thank you, Mark.
And I think
Thank you, Grant.
this has been. I think it's actually been a record live stream in terms of we're now over 2 hours.
Okay.
We only said we'll do an hour and a half if we're lucky. And obviously, massive thanks to all the viewers who've tuned in throughout this year. Your questions, your support, people have given us, the people we've met out and about. You met somebody in a lift this week, didn't you?
Yeah, I had a great moment. So went to get in the lift and I'm terrible. Everywhere I'm terrible. This quite younger lad come in, he had a mega inside his test instrument box and he jumped in the lift with us. And the second he got in there, I went to him, do you know who we are? No, that's a terrible thing to say. And he went, I do, can I have a selfie? And he went, so he got a lift shot of us all. And he said, I've been watching you for ages. He said, I love the eFIXX things and all the rest of it. It's just brilliant. Yeah. Moments like that, you just can't get back. Almost the highlight of the year, almost right at the end of the year.
It is. And highlights of the year, obviously, there's one person who hasn't been seen tonight, obviously Joe Robinson, because he's been found out that he forged tables somehow related to the on-site guy that we wouldn't condone at all. But he will be back next week. We won't be, but we will be a Christmas special from Joe, or an end of the year special from Joe, looking back at some of the best moments, and he's picked up a few bits. We don't know what he's put in that, because you see, we just don't know what he gets up to.
No, absolutely.
We're the last people to find out when he does these things.
Is that a special news at Penn?
A special news at Penn that'll round it up. We have got Electrical News Weekly as usual, the last one of this week's one, this year's one, and we'll be back, in the new year.
Yeah, for our first live stream, what are we talking about? Is it the second week in January? I don't know.
Will be, yeah.
Second week in January, so look out for that. We'll be across all our usual social media platforms, but a massive thanks for those people that tuned in to us rather than watching a semi-final of a World Cup. We wished, like you did, that we couldn't have put this on this evening and had to do it on Thursday because we were all watching that semi-final, but of course it is England, it is penalties, and we know the conclusion. We'll see you in next year, 2023. Thank you very much for this year.